Hey, Anna and Wendy, I probably won't actually start class until 5:10 or later, just because that's what it says, and some of my students really do stick to that whole like, this is exactly when it starts kind of thing. So if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them, but otherwise, just hang out with me. Yes, take a minute. It's great. Sounds good. Yeah, I don't know. The last time I checked at Workday, I think it said 5:10. And I actually, so on these nights when we have speakers, I actually have not told them that we will start until 5:30 with the thought that I will be on to answer any questions, just because it's weird to send speakers an invite for 5:10. Um, but this week I kind of have some catching up to do. So we'll probably take most of the time. Might not have so much work time, but I think it's okay because I moved on to the instructional concept rather than instructional plan. Hey everyone. Um, I think I was just saying that I'm here. You're welcome to hang out with me, ask me questions if you want, but I'm gonna start class at 5:10 because that's the official start time. How is everyone? I feel like should do something entertaining in this session before class, but I have no idea what to do. And the more I think about it, the more awkward I become. So well, welcome everyone. I wasn't going to start until 5:10 and people might be still coming in, totally fine. I will tell you that every other week I have actually invited our guest speakers to come at 5:30 because it's weird to ask somebody to start at 5:10, but also that gives us 20 minutes of like runway time if anyone's got questions before our guest speakers join on. Today, I'm actually going to do a brief guide through the course because I didn't get a chance to do that last week. Thank you everyone so much. And just kind of talk about some things. When the guest speakers join us at 5:30, we are going to divert to do that. And then after they are done, we'll take a break and I will, I'll talk about the learning focuses of this week, as well as answer any course questions that you have. So I'm going to try to share my screen. I'm not going to try. I know I can do it. But so this is my orientation to Canvas. This is what appears when I hit the dashboard for this course on Canvas. Does this look like other people's setups? Oh, here, I can do the views. Okay. So if you didn't read it, you can. This just kind of talks why I'm geeked out for this class. I just really am excited. So this is a way to make this class more available for our endorsement seekers, as well as kind of be a capstone class for our traditional students. So it kind of assumes that you know how to teach. So we're going to think about what you should teach. And kind of some of the things I was thinking about with that was like, if you don't know about it, there used to be practice houses in the 1940s, 50s, where there used to be homes on campuses where home ec majors used to raise orphan babies. They would come in for like a period of 3 months with another group of cohorts, and then they switch in and out. And at the time, that was thought to be like great practice. And now with what we know about attachment, like we're like, oh wait, that's kind of and if anyone wants more of that, you know, honestly, just email me because there's a great NPR like episode. It's very interesting. But like through that lens, we kind of always want to be aware like things are shifting, changing, like research on humans is always changing. And because it's like you can't do control, you can't like literally put people in bad circumstances to see the outcomes. It's always evolving. So I'm really just taking the 7 content areas that is defined by Iowa, and I'm breaking that into 7 weeks with a focus on each week. Something you need to know about me is I like to organize all my courses by modules. So when you're looking at class, the best place you can do is hit on this module, and I try to do it in a very chronological format, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you hit problems at any point, let me know. There shouldn't be phantom assignments showing up in this one because there was no previous course to copy it from. But if an assignment ever shows up with a due date and you go over here and there's not like it's not under a module header that says it's due this time, just hit me up with an email. You won't be late, anything like that. Just ask. I'd hate for you to work on it and find out that it was not intended to be there. I don't think that's a problem in this one, but just in case. So this is just kind of about the overview of the class. I took off your instructor because at this point, if you're an endorsement seeker with RAPL or teacher and intern program, you had to have other courses from me because this is the last one you should take. And if you're an FCEDS student, hopefully this is a capstone thing for you. So I took off about me, but if you want to ask me anything, I'm pretty open book. I I'm happy to share. The course syllabus here has syllabusy things. Probably the most important thing is like the objectives for this class, and really that is what I talked about. You want to analyze and prioritize what to teach and what not, and justify that with our standards and what's good in the research. I want you to critically appraise evidence, so seeing bias, and like translating. So we're going to engage with some of the journal articles that I gave you in class. I do not expect you to assign high schoolers scientific journal articles to read. Really, I don't. I'm expecting that like you're kind of like doing the higher level and diffusing that on down. Then I really just want you to create like ideas for good learning experience that move beyond like the teacher-centered instruction. And this one is going to change because now, based on feedback from everyone, and we'll get to that, I've decided not to go with the instructional plan for every unit. We will instead focus on instructional plan concepts, and you will make one final instructional plan for the final. So this, you need to know, I'll be reconfiguring because this is no longer going to be this amount and there's going to be one. So I didn't get that done in time for this class. Just beginning back to school is a tough time because that's when all the spring teachers need to be recommended and all that. If you're following me on Facebook, you know this, but I will have that done as soon as possible. Everything else points wise will remain the same, but these things will be a higher percentage, obviously, because 50 times 70 is, it's probably going to be 20%, but it won't be 20% anymore because all these, okay, yeah, you understand how ratios work, right? Right. Okay. Under modules, I was going to talk through these example ones in last class, but because I didn't have class, I asked you to do them for a point or 5 points for the one each. So I'm just going to breeze through them, but generally under each module, I'm going to do an overview, and the overview has the following sections. I'm going to describe like what the focus is. Now, the Iowa Department of Ed only has those words. They don't have any legislative guidance. So sometimes I'm going to put my commentary on what I take it to believe. Here, oh no, the pedagogical, sorry, I mixed that two up. I was talking about content area. Pedagogical focus is going to be something tied with our reading, or like next week, I'm going to show you AI models that'll hopefully like reduce your workload as a teacher. And so that will be the pedagogical focus each unit. And then we're going to go through these 7 of these content areas. And I've kind of like shuffled them up based on what they fit best with. Here I'm going to link the national standards that are most close to that content area. Then here are SCED codes. So that's where I looked into the like literal, every endorsement has codes that it says that this endorsement type can teach. And so there are a lot of like courses, and I just put them over here. And the reason I did that is because sometimes like I explained that the content area doesn't really have a definition, but from my side, I look at the courses you could potentially teach, and I kind of create my idea of what I should teach you about based on that. If you're in my fall housing and interior design course, that's what that course is designed about, with one exception. And you'll have to forgive me, but there's the ways that anything wouldn't prepare you for everything unless you were going to stay in college for 20 years. But technically, if you're FCS endorsed, you can teach a class on reupholstering furniture. And I don't feel like I can get to that in an online, course. So if you do wind up wanting to teach a class on upholstery refinishing, that might be an area you have to dive deeper into on your own. So, and then finally, I put some careers related to this content area. That's becoming more and more a big focus. It's kind of always been more for secondary, but at higher ed, it's even becoming, if anyone's heard of any of that language about like colleges proving their return on ROI, return on investment, that's what this is linked to. And at the end of this time, our actual final for this class, which I'm just, I'm not gonna put points with, I'm just gonna put on your good graces that you will attend and be guinea pigs. We have to make a summit for all FCS teachers across Iowa on how to really communicate that FCS is still part of the new career clusters. And so you guys are going to be our test audience with that. And so it may not be worth like class points, but really understand it's really important to the discipline. And you're going to be the first previewers of it, right? Right. Everyone's excited. Yeah. I only get to see 3 people, and I might be. This is what I don't always love about teaching online is the inability to kind of like read the room, gauge the room. All right. Any questions so far? Okay. I'm going to go to these example modules or this example one and just talk through. Pedagogical focus here, I talked about whether you should get the textbook or not. Everyone seemed to answer correctly for that, just as long as my on-campus students realized, so there was one person that was like, I need to do that. Make sure you do that because it closes at some point and you will be overcharged for a simple textbook if you don't do it. Opting out. For those of you still staying opted in, I just wanted to make you sure you knew, because a lot of times immediate access means like it'll put the digital textbook on your Canvas. There is no digital textbook for this one, so you actually have to go to the store and pick up your copy. All right. So then reflect each week after, oh, you know what, here, I should go back here. This might not have shown up because I might not have told you how I organize things in modules, but this is really our general course schedule. I'm kind of basing it off of every 2 weeks. And one of the things that now I know we're going to be focusing on a instructional plan concept. I will actually develop this kind of graphic for the whole class. So this will have dates on it and you'll see when things are due. We are right now here in this one with the fact that after our content experts join us and share, I'm gonna talk about what I was gonna talk about last week, except really shortened and condensed. But I think actually a lot of people are really, once I talk about the CTE learning theories, I think they will ring a lot of bells for people either from other educational courses or if you've taken Foundations of CTE with me. I think this is the most entry level one that I have, and I think you'll get it really easily. Kind of the things I want to note is like, I do have things closing, and that's not because I don't want people doing them. It's just like at the discussion for today closed last night because I took all your questions for Dr. Zarling and I sent them to her if she wanted to look over them. And I took all your questions for Dr. Huang and I sent them to her. And that's why the discussion closes. That being said, if you don't have any, I've got nothing right now set to close because I knew that I missed the first class. So if there's anything you need extensions on, that's okay. There's no late penalties. If I've marked it 0, just go back in and do it and submit it, and I will reassess that. The reason I have to do that is because if I just skip over it and then you do submit it, it doesn't show back up on my to-do list, and then I miss that you've done it, and I don't go back to, create it. So the pedagogical focus, it will be it's going to be usually assigned textbook reading. Thank you for whoever shouted out that the textbook reading was easy. I thought it was pretty accessible textbook. I really like practical hands-on things. My life is full of books or textbooks that I have good intentions to read, but I haven't. So I tried to really think about that from that standpoint. Next week, it will probably actually not be a textbook reading because we're going to focus on AI. And instead of like reading the textbook, I just want you to pick an AI tool you're not familiar with and explore. Because I really do think AI has the ability, more than anything I've ever seen in this lifetime, to make teaching more manageable. But that being said, like we have to learn how to use it where we're putting our own lens over the top of it, because what AI generates out may not always be you might not understand it. And so making sure we understand what we're producing and making things like that. So this is just like, for those of you who did the pedagogical focus, it's just a series of like 5 questions that connect the reading and it really to your current or future teaching practice. Did anyone have any questions over the reflection? Like the example one's up here, but the one for this week was down here. And the one for this week was due, but it's not closing. There won't be any late. It just asks you about the theoretical focuses as applied to your. Were there any questions about those? Okay. Dip your toe in. This is in advance of the guest speaker, and I'm going to post some a discussion because I'm using a discussion because I want the kind of hierarchy. So I'm going to put the like prompt, and then you respond to my prompt. There was confusion around this, so and that's why I'm really glad that I checked on people. They say like communication is half what you say, but also what the hearer hears. And so if this was you, you were not the only one. There was a lot of people who felt they had to post 6 times. You don't, is the good news. Somehow I like whatever I said implied that you had to post 3 times and 3 replies. No, you just have to do 3 times. I was using the example of 2 speakers because that's how many I have coming on this week. But in the future, like if I magically get more than 3 speakers, you only have to do 3 times. But the reason I want you focusing on what the speakers are doing is because I want you to like think through the questions before, and then we don't have that awkward silence of like, are there any questions? I'm just really hoping to make it a more discussion friendly format. I'm also researching my own ideas for how to make online class interactive, but I am welcome and open to any ideas if people have been on to this before, because I miss you all, but I also very much understand you're working full-time learners and like this is, so just be aware that that is why that is. And the reason it's 5 points, it really is like 3 sentences. For those of you who did put in on the dip your toe in, like I said, it's not going to close this week. In the future when it will, but just do that again. The questions I thought for Dr. Zarling and Dr. Wong were outstanding. I thought you had some really good, insightful ones. One thing I do want to make you aware of is there's so many topics you could like focus on in a content area. I can only think of some. So if you ever want to, I have this other, and it's like asking like, well, okay, related to the topic of family studies, would there be something else you personally are very like geeked out about and want to explore? And the thing here is with other, you got to like do some reconnaissance on your own to say like, if I'm going to do this, here's some things I could look at, because I don't want you to go into dive deeper without having something to dive deeper into. Yeah. So basically, yes, if dip your toe is dipping your toe in a puddle, you have to be like, oh, here's the pool. I will dive deeper in so you don't hit your head on the concrete. Does that make sense? I will say that if you're ever struggling, I can kind of show you how to find journal articles. They don't necessarily have to be journal articles, like white papers online. That's all good things. The only thing I don't want is some mama's or data's or whoever. I don't want just somebody's personal blog as the source of your information reference, if that makes sense. Oh, since Steph is here, Steph reminded me the things that the county extension puts out, those are reputable sources, things like that. The Canopy that I pulled some documentaries off, I like went down a rabbit hole. There's so many documentaries related to FCS. There's podcasts, there's other things. It's just if you're going to dive deeper, I want you to think about how you can turn this little puddle into a pool and give me some ideas for what you're going to dive deeper into. And with that, I'm going to pause because Dr. Zarling is here. Hello, Dr. Zarling. So Dr. Zarling is the new department chair for HDFS. So technically, y'all, this means she's my boss. But she's really nice. She was in my hall before she was my boss, and I think we're friends. But I'm really excited to have her here. she does a lot of interesting work. But what we chose to focus on for this time, I'm sharing still, right? I'm sharing my screen.
Yes, I see your canvas.
And I am struggling to unshare my screen, which is, maybe if I go back to the, nope. I apologize. I have used Zoom several times and I've never had my Zoom buttons disappear.
Oh, Laura, someone just asked, are we not required to have our video on?
You are, however, at this point, I would like for everyone to have your video on. However, there are some people who have to commute at this point, and they have discussed with me that they will get home and safe and turn on their video as soon as possible. Okay.
I think it's on focus mode, so I can't really see anybody else's video besides yours, Laura.
Okay, I'm gonna pin Dr. Zarling first, and that'll help you see her. But in the top, I found this out. If you ever want to see like the whole class or something, on the top right-hand corner, there's this box called View, and that changes you from speaker to gallery, etc. But Dr. Zarling, do you want to present and then wait for questions, or do you want them to speak up if they have questions through?
Well, okay, so I actually was wondering, like, should I do a little of my, I mean, the questions were just, oh my gosh, so good. And I wanted to make sure to answer as many as I could. So I don't want to present for too long because it seems like people already read the article.
They just skimmed it, and I thought the questions were dynamic for just skimming it. So that's with this one. If you choose Intimate Partner Violence Dive Deeper, you read Dr. Zarling's article, and then I have a documentary related to rehabilitation and domestic partner abuse, which is similar to, I don't know, she's not in the documentary, sorry, but it's similar, so that should give you more perspective. But yeah, I thought they were dynamic questions. Tell you what, show of hands for have her start with her presentation first, or just do open-ended questions. So do hands up now or wave for she presents for a while first. Okay, and then hands up right now for we just ask her questions. Okay, I think they want you to do a little bit of your presentation. Or is that too hard? Like, I should have put it out.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm just going to need to cut myself off so that I can answer the questions, because if I get going, you know, sometimes it's hard to. Oh, can you enable my screen sharing?
Yes. Yes. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I normally think to. And Young, I'm going to do the same for you before.
Oh, now I see everybody. Before everyone, I couldn't see any of you before. So whatever you just did, Laura, everyone popped up on my screen now.
That's good to know.
At all. I mean, so it was like, okay, wait a minute.
Okay, so now we can take our moment to say hello. I now see all of your beautiful faces. Okay. Well, it's much better presenting to faces than black boxes, so that's good. I mean, obviously, if you're commuting, that's fine, no worries. Okay, so I'm going to try to do like somewhat of a condensed presentation because I do want to get to your questions because they were really good. So, and I know that you can see like my notes in the side, but I don't really care because if I do full screen, then it covers all of you. So this is, and I don't really care if you see my notes or anything. This is more to just keep me on track. So I do want to first acknowledge the funders of this work. So my work has been funded by the Department of Justice, Office on Violence Against Women, the CDC, and various funding agencies. And I just want to thank them for their support of my work and my research. So, one of the main things that's important is sort of defining what I mean by domestic violence in my work. There's various definitions, there's various different ways to look at it. The great thing about HDFS and FCS is that we look at things from an interdisciplinary perspective. And so that's really important with something like domestic violence, because it's what we call an overdetermined behavior. That means that it has multitude of risk factors. There's no one thing that predicts domestic violence. It's a multitude of different factors, and that's why it's even more important to look at it from multiple angles. So I'm trained as a clinical psychologist, and then I've been in HDFS for about 11 years now. So I've also looked at it from the HDFS angle, but I incorporate public health, social work, psychology, sociology, multiple different criminal justice, multiple different perspectives. I'm not an expert in all those areas by any means, but I've definitely looked at domestic violence from those perspectives. And so in my work, I define domestic violence as any physical, sexual, psychological, financial, or emotional abuse toward an intimate partner. And an intimate partner can be someone, a current or former romantic partner, or someone that you share a child with. So that's sort of an important caveat there, that it doesn't necessarily have to have been a romantic ongoing connection, because if you share a child, that often automatically creates a relationship, regardless of whether there was intention to be ongoing romantic or not. So I am going to focus on men in this presentation. However, I did notice a question or two was asking about female intimate partner violence towards men. It absolutely happens. I wouldn't say I'm as much of an expert in that as I am in male perpetrated intimate partner violence. And there are a couple reasons for that, but they really are just different things. And I say that primarily because it is really a political issue. And that's something that I didn't know when I was first getting into this field, that it is a political issue to say that, you know, women also perpetrate intimate partner violence. I mean, they do, and the data show that. However, it's a very complicated thing to come out and say that as a researcher, because there's a lot of, you know, history around the feminist movement and that movement making domestic violence a crime. You know, prior to the 1970s, it wasn't a crime to beat your wife. It was viewed as a family matter that just happened behind closed doors, and it was something that, you know, the family just took care of privately. So the feminist movement in the 1970s changed that, such that, you know, beating your wife or hitting your wife or engaging in intimate partner violence actually was a crime. Now, of course, there are limits to that. It's really only physical and sexual violence that's a crime. Most psychological, financial, and emotional abuse is not actually a crime. I mean, harassment, if it falls under harassment, that could be a crime, but, you know, it's really only physical and sexual abuse that is actually a crime. And even then, it is not, you know, people have this misconception that you get sent to prison if you commit domestic assault. That is not true at all. It is actually in Iowa, so it's different by state, but I'll just tell you what it is in Iowa. You do not go to prison until your third domestic assault. Ooh. And then it's considered a felony, and you could go to prison. But you are out in the community. I say you, who the men who commits the domestic assault, the first time you're out in the community. And that's why these programs like mine were developed, because the whole point was to keep families together, to keep the men out of prison and keep families together. Now, the government also had a financial reason for that, right? Because if men are in prison, they can't support the women and their kids. So it's sort of a complicated political issue that I don't actually want to get into today unless people have specific questions, but there's a bunch of reasons why these programs were developed to rehabilitate these men instead of send them to prison. And some of those reasons I agree with, and some of them maybe I don't. I mean, certainly you're your third offense is what finally sends you to prison. I mean, that seems, I think they should take into account the lethality of the methods and things like that. But so anyway, your first and second offense, you're out in the community living your life. And then you get mandated by law to take my class here in Iowa. So they have to do the class, or they could get sent to jail. Now, that's actually pretty rare for that to happen. Most of the time, they just stop showing up. They still have it on their record. They have to complete it. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. But in theory, it's mandated by law. So the problem with these types of programs is that, kind of like what I was saying earlier about how domestic violence is overdetermined and so many different things predict it, that means that the people who engage in domestic violence are a heterogeneous group. There's no one profile. Researchers have tried to like make subtypes in profiles. Like, pit bulls versus cobras was one of the typologies at one point, meaning one was cold and calculated in their abuse and one was hot-tempered and, impulsive in their abuse. It really, when it comes down to it in practice, those typologies just don't really end up helping very much. And that's where I think research, I think once researchers heard that it wasn't having clinical utility, thankfully researchers stopped doing all these fancy statistical techniques to try to put these people into profiles, because if it has zero practical implication, I think researchers need to take note of that and then move on to something that's actually helpful. That's my opinion. Not all researchers would agree with that. That's just my perspective. Certainly there's doing research for research's sake and putting things into boxes. That's fun statistically, but if it's not helping people on the ground, I don't view it as very helpful. So I'm motivated by doing research that actually helps people who are running these programs and hoping to make them better. So what that means is, because the men who are in these groups are so complicated and a heterogeneous mix, we have to create programs that address as many different risk factors as possible. And so that's one of the complications of previous programs, because the traditional programs have basically focused on one single risk factor. Does anyone know what that is?
Oh, is it substance abuse?
No, it's not even actually on this slide. I mean, kind of, I guess. So the only risk factor that traditional programs really focus on is the, sexist belief system. I mean, that kind of fits into rigid beliefs about masculinity, but the main thing they focus on is that, you believe you are entitled to control women. That is what traditional programs believed was the one and only cause of domestic violence. And, I do want to say just very clearly that, of course, that is a risk factor. I mean, I'm not denying that's a risk factor and it's a problem. However, research over the past, 4 decades is very clear that there are a multitude of risk factors that typically, coalesce and combine to, equal the likelihood of committing intimate partner violence. And it is usually a mixture of all these things I have on the slide, plus probably more. I mean, on this slide, I focused mostly on individual and relationship factors, but there's of course social and cultural factors as well that are just not really my specialty because I'm not a sociologist. But those factors are important as well. They're just harder to address in a program. So rigid beliefs about masculinity is a big risk factor, particularly what it means to be a man. I must control my emotions at all times. I must not show vulnerability. People must respect me. And then, in there is usually, but not always, pejorative beliefs about women. But, the thing about measuring that, it's really difficult because in general, in our society, it's not acceptable to have those views anymore. So like men don't really like openly endorse them. They know they're not supposed to say that. So it's a little bit tricky to research that. I mean, people have tried to assess it via implicit methods and things like that. And again, those just don't end up working very well. Yeah, I mean, certainly they often, have experiences from their childhood, often with their mothers, that have contributed to difficult relationships and difficult attachment and difficulty connecting with others, and specifically with women. So yeah, there's something there, but it's not always this socially sanctioned entitlement to control women. Like, that's a very sort of simple way to put it. You know, I've worked with probably 2,000 of these men over the years, and it's just a very complicated thing, you know. It's just really simplified to say, oh, they just, you know, are biased and have, you know, think they can control women. Well, that's just really simplified. But yeah, substance use and abuse is very common and often a trigger for the intimate partner violence episodes. Also a history of trauma and resulting emotion dysregulation. So I don't know how much you all know about, you know, the impact of trauma in childhood, but just to put it quickly, in case you don't know, you know, experiencing traumatic events in childhood, you know, changes the brain in such a way that that toxic stress impacts their ability to learn how to, you know, regulate their emotions and, you know, to think in healthy ways about themselves and relationships in the world. And particularly when that happens chronically, it has a pretty significant impact on one's ability to regulate their emotions. So it's not just that they didn't learn how to regulate their emotions, it's that their trauma impacted their body such that it is now that much more difficult for them to regulate their emotions. So it's both of those happening. I mean, yeah, they're often in homes that didn't really teach them healthy ways to regulate their emotions, but again, it's coupled with their biology making it much more difficult. So, and then finally, I already alluded to this, but, you know, relationship factors, you know, oftentimes men who experience these first three, they end up getting themselves into relationships that are volatile and high intensity, you know, things like that. And again, this is in no way blaming the victim. And it is such that they are often, you know, choosing relationships in which there is a lot of high emotions and conflict. And that is just another trigger for the intimate partner violence. And again, that's not excusing it by any means. None of this excuses the violence. It's more a way to understand what's happening so we can help them. Well, not necessarily we as in you, but me and those of us who work with these men, we need to understand this so that we can help them. Okay, so I already kind of explained why these programs exist. In Iowa, it's through the correctional system, these programs, but in some states, it's through like the Department of Public Health or, you know, Department of Health and Human Services, or it's contracted out to behavioral health clinics. So every state kind of does these programs differently, which just makes research even more confusing on these programs. But so as I mentioned, the traditional treatment is the Duluth model and views men's sexist beliefs and attitudes as the like one thing that they need to unlearn in order to not be violent against women. So this created a bunch of controversy in the field when I was in graduate school, which is somewhat partly tied to why I eventually started working in this area, because I found this, you know, ironically, these are almost all men who were fighting in the field about, you know, Duluth sucks and it doesn't work and it doesn't have any data. And then someone else would write back and say, yes, it does. And it was this whole thing in the research literature. But, you know, if you look at the data, domestic violence interventions are much less effective than almost every other type of intervention. So, I mean, the data are what they are, right? Like, you can't really argue with this is the conglomeration of hundreds of studies. So traditional psychotherapy for like anxiety or depression, the effect size is large. So the larger the number down here is the larger effect size, which just means how well it works on the outcome we're targeting. And psychotherapy for anxiety and depression is pretty large effect size. We do pretty well in that area. Substance abuse treatment, a little less effective, but still in the mid-range, 0.5. General criminal justice rehabilitation programs, those are certainly lower. You know, that's when you start getting into the mandated nature of the programs, which always reduces their effectiveness. But look down here, domestic violence interventions are 0.1 effect size, which is almost nothing. So if you translate that into percent wise, a man who has been arrested and sanctioned and completed one of these batterers intervention programs is only 5% less likely to reoffend than a man who is just simply arrested. So given the fact that billions and billions of dollars are spent on this program, it's very disturbing to see this very small effect. So I've already kind of covered the reasons why this may be the case. Focusing on just one risk factor is, it just isn't really very efficient because there's a multitude of risk factors for this behavior. Programs have often been punitive, which I'm not sure how much you're all familiar with behavior change, but punitive measures don't work. Punishment doesn't really work. And it's something that the correctional system has now realized after decades of data showing that the more punitive they are, the less likely people are to change their behavior ultimately. So there's this temptation to punish these men because of their crimes, but then they end up going back after their punishment and doing the same thing. So in some ways it's not punishment then, because the definition of punishment is the implementation of a consequence that reduces the likelihood of the behavior. Well, in this case, that's clearly not working. So we have to rethink the punitiveness and punishment if we actually want the behavior to change. So yeah, this slide just kind of summarizes everything I've already said. So anyway, in 2010, when I was in graduate school, the Department of Corrections contacted me because I was working on my dissertation to create a new program for relationship violence. And they wanted a new batterers intervention program because the Duluth model wasn't working. So that's when I created Active. And I spent a couple years leading the groups, working with the criminal justice practitioners. I interviewed hundreds of perpetrators and victims to get their perspectives, and their voices informed the program, as well as, of course, research and the practitioners as well. So I was going to try to make this shorter than the full thing. So let's see, what should I skip to? I mean, the main thing that's different about this program is the targeting of multitude of risk factors that I talked about earlier, all the different ones. I mean, as many as possible. And the facilitator stance is collaborative instead of punitive. So in the old program, it would be shaming, finger wagging. I mean, have any of you ever been motivated to change your behavior if someone's like wagging their finger at you? No. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that we thought that that would work. I mean, I don't know, maybe it made sense at the time. But turns out that, the finger wagging just led to people basically I've seen it. I witnessed this. The men would they sit there like this, arms crossed, scowl on their face. They don't say anything. And they just count down the seconds till the 90 minutes is up and they can leave. And so, we focus more on connecting with the men, grounding our own emotional experience, so part of, what my work with this has evolved into is training the facilitators of these groups. They themselves have to go through a transformation to be able to do this effectively, because they often struggle with their own rigid beliefs and thoughts about what these men should be doing. And it's understandable, right? Like, you read a police report of one of the men. I'm sorry, I'm totally missing the comments. So I'll have to get to those in a second.
Nope, you're fine. I'm monitoring them.
Okay, cool. You read the police report, this guy that's coming in tonight, he kicked his pregnant wife in the stomach. Yeah, it's natural that you're gonna have some judgmental thoughts, right? Like, you're human, you're gonna have judgmental thoughts on that. But people who choose to work in this field, you have to learn to somehow transcend that. It's tough. It's very tough. So I spend a lot of my time helping them do that so that they can do this work effectively. I was just in a training. Oh, when was that? Was that July that I was training the Ontario Department of Corrections? Oh my gosh, they were a group that was not open to hearing this, and they did not want to even hear about being collaborative or non-judgmental with the men. And, I had to ask them, is this really the right program for you then? I mean, they wanted to use Active because of its data and effectiveness, but then they weren't really on board with doing what is required. So we had to have sort of a critical, crucial conversation about whether that was going to work if they weren't willing to do the internal work themselves. I mean, in this, we are the work. The facilitators are the work. I mean, I'm sure you all know that being educators, your own, what's going on with you impacts how you're able to educate. And that is very true when it comes to these groups as well. So anyway, I won't get in the weeds on the study methods, but I collected, not only criminal justice data to see if the program is working, which showed that in general, Active was more effective than Duluth. But then this is the important slide, which is that the victims reported significantly fewer intimate partner violence behaviors when their partner was in Active versus if he was in Duluth. So to me, this is the money shot right here. I mean, yeah, having less criminal charges is important, but I mean, most domestic violence goes unreported. So this is only part of the story. So contacting the victims was very difficult work. It's really hard work to contact them and to make sure to have their permission and to honor their no. But we kept at it, and we got about 60 women to respond. And this was a year after their partner had completed the program. So on physical and verbal aggression, you can see they reported an average of 13 of those behaviors over the year versus the victims who had a partner in the Duluth program, they reported 30. Similar numbers for controlling behaviors. And then I included a measure of stalking because just in case they weren't with their partner anymore, but their partner maybe still had access to them. I mean, stalking behaviors were quite low in general, as you can see, an average of 2 over the course of a year for ACT participants versus 6. So in other words, I think the victim reports are what ultimately mean the most and give us the most information about if this is working. Okay, so I think that's the important stuff, I would say. So I'm happy now to get to questions. What did I miss in the chat?
Nothing really.
Okay.
Somebody was asking if there was resources for women, like if there were sources about women who engage in IPV, and I quickly looked up some things that I responded with if somebody wanted to explore that side. But let's if you unshare, or you could keep your screen share, but why not, I'm gonna put it out there. People, I synthesize your questions, but is anyone willing to ask theirs out?
I mean, I can answer the women one right now if you want.
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways it's a pretty long discussion, so I'll try to keep it succinct and you can then go and look up more information. But it is different because in general, women do not have the so-called like upper hand, right? Like in general, men are at an advantage socially, culturally, and physically. So even if women engage in intimate partner violence at similar rates as men, it's in a completely different context. Like a 250-pound man punching a woman is very different than a 110-pound woman punching a 250-pound, like context matters. And I think where controversy happens in the field is when researchers just take the survey data and they're like, see, women engage in intimate partner violence as much as men. Well, that needs to be contextualized. No, I'm not saying it's always self-defense. I'm not saying it's always without consequences. Obviously, men who have been victimized, they need help as well. It's just the context is very different. And women who engage in intimate partner violence are almost always have experienced severe trauma. So men have too. So for example, the men in my programs have an average. Is everyone familiar with ACEs? Adverse childhood experiences? Okay, good. I'm seeing all the nods. So on average, the men in my programs have about 4 to 5 adverse childhood experiences. You know, the women in these programs have like 6, 7. So again, they're all traumatized. We need trauma-informed services for both men and women, but it's like the women are even more so, if that makes sense. And those are women who come to the attention of the criminal justice system. So I'm talking about the extremes, you know. So there's a spectrum, right? So anyway, there are some, you know, I did my master's thesis actually on the risk factors for intimate partner violence between men and women. And if you just look at risk factors in a vacuum, they're somewhat similar. But again, it's the broader context view, and that's why an HDFS view. Are they familiar with Bronfenbrenner, Laura?
The FCDS would be Bronfenbrenner, if anyone's not familiar, is the ecological systems theory, and it shows like rings around the person. Does that ring bells for people? You might have had it in ed psych or lifespan development or developmental psychology. And it kind of just talks about there's you at the center of it, but then there's the people that are directly connected to you, but then those people have connections with outside forces that then affect them and affect you. Yeah.
Right. So and now I forget, why did I bring this up? Oh my gosh. What was I saying?
Just difference between female and male.
Yeah, exactly. So like the risk factors in the immediate environment, the microsystem, and even the mesosystem are like somewhat similar between males and females, but like the broader system is different. You know, males and females are just socialized differently in our culture, as in most cultures.
Go in my room and bring me down a sweatshirt.
So, you know, those are the levels that like I'm not an expert in, but I know enough to tell you they differ for males and females. But like the individual psychology, there's not a huge difference, you know, but context matters. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'll
Well,
stop there.
I would also say approaches like this, just from the, like you said, you're not a sociologist, but you're just more likely to get men being told to either take this course or not, versus if you're dealing with women who perpetrate intimate partner violence, you probably, if they're getting interventions at all, it probably is on a more individual therapy level. And so then it can be hard to synthesize that information.
That's right. So my program is used with women, but there's like, so in the Des Moines area, for example, there's probably 20 of these men's groups and 1 women's. You know, so like
it's a good example.
Yeah, like there's just differences in who comes to the attention of the criminal justice system. And I'm not saying it's always fair, but yeah.
Someone wanna Wendy asked, is psychotherapy a part of this program?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's also a controversial question. So the traditional view and the feminist view is that absolutely not. This is not therapy, because therapy implies that mental illness is a cause, and the traditional view is no way is mental illness a cause in any way. No way could emotions have any factoring into this. That is the traditional view of the Duluth model. So no, so the simple answer to your question is no, this is not therapy. And actually, even the long answer is no, in that I train paraprofessionals to implement this program. Does it include therapeutic theories and techniques? Well, yes, I'm a clinical psychologist by training, and I utilized my background in psychotherapy and to inform the program. But I developed it such that paraprofessionals can deliver it, and it's all skill-based. You know, therapy is really more of a one-on-one thing. I mean, you can have group therapy, but that's not what this is. There are certain aspects of it that may be similar, but you know, we don't sit around and, you know, they don't just pour out, you know, trauma or anything in these groups. That's not the point. It's skill-based learning. So yeah, I would say the most simple answer is no, this is not therapy. And I've made sure to not call it therapy, even if there are some aspects, because that's a controversial thing. Oh, and I guess the other thing I want to add to that is these men being in therapy can actually be a problem. So I know people always think that's weird when I say that, but I've seen it happen. So when you are trained as a therapist, you are trained to have unconditional positive regard for your client. And you're not really trained to investigate the truth of what they tell you in that room. I mean, if you're a really good therapist, maybe you'll do some investigation. But when I was a therapist, I was seeing 10 patients a day. I didn't have time to also be detective, to call in their friends and family and make sure that what they were telling me was true. So these folks being in individual therapy can be a problem, especially if they're not in the group program that promotes accountability. So that's the beauty of these group programs, is that everyone's there for the same reason. Everyone knows it. You can deny your behavior all you want. That's fine. But we're all here for the same reason. We all committed intimate partner violence, and there's no, like, we don't really entertain denial. You know, it is what it is, and you're being held accountable for your violent behavior. Individual therapists, most of them don't know how to do that. They either just believe what they say when they say they didn't do it, because that's how you're trained as a therapist. You believe what your client tells you. And I'm not here to speak out against therapy. I'm trained as a therapist. It's just that when it comes to domestic violence, individual therapy becomes a potential problem.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You don't have to put it in the chat. You are free to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, and I can go back to the email, the questions you
Right.
put in there if you would rather me do that.
I have it pulled up as well, but
Okay.
anyone want to
I got a
volunteer?
question.
Yeah.
Anna, sorry. So I was just typing it out, but is there a point at which your approach becomes, or your program becomes mandated? So for example, like the 3 strikes and you're out type of thing, or is it up to like prosecutorial recommendation, or the judge just says like, at this point you have to do this program? Because I would also then kind of wonder if that has something to do with the female perpetrators of IPV. So if it's just the prosecutor or the judge decides you have to do this program, well, if the prosecutor or the judge has some sort of bias one way or the other about female perpetrators, they may never recommend this for them. Does that make sense?
No, it's state law. It's state law. So yeah, I mean, obviously sometimes lawyers, you know, what is that called? Pleading down, things like that. That happens. But it is state law that if you are convicted of domestic assault, you have to do this program, whether you're male or female. Yeah, it's in Iowa code. It's in our law.
Wow.
That's why I don't need, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't need to recruit for my research studies, because I have a pipeline of thousands of men who just come in, unfortunately. But fortunately for me, for data collection, but not good.
So then it is still really based on conviction rates, which means it's also based on prosecutors or anybody pursuing criminal charges, as opposed to, like you said, pleading down or something like that. So that pipeline is still being impacted by, is that, I can't remember which system that is for Bronfenbrenner, but it's one of those larger systems where like thinking, oh, I've got a female perpetrator in front of me, I should charge her criminally for this, or no, she's just, I don't know, got her lady time right now, and so I'm just gonna recommend therapy, versus, oh, here's a dude, immediate criminal charges. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. All that stuff factors in for sure. I would say Bronfenbrenner's model applies then in terms of conviction rates and what happens, not really what caused the behavior to begin with, right? But you can then study what happens after the behavior also through the ecological model. And absolutely, you know, I mean, even police, when they arrive on scene, they have decisions to make, right? About who to arrest, things like that. So yeah, it's complicated because I would rather just study domestic violence outside of the criminal justice system. And I actually have a study going in which I'm doing that, but that's beyond the scope of today's talk. But there's problems studying this in the criminal justice system too. I mean, our criminal justice system is extremely racist. In fact, Iowa has one of the largest discrepancies in terms of the percentage of Black individuals in the state versus the percentage who are incarcerated. We're one of the worst states in the nation. So the criminal justice system is racist, and hopefully I'm not saying anything too controversial because the data are what they are. And I mean, in my program, there's like, yeah, about 30% of the men, 30 to 40% of the men are Black versus the percentage of Black men in Polk County is like 7%. So clearly there's things operating here beyond, you know, at multiple levels of the ecological model. And again, that's why it's so important for sociologists to study domestic violence, criminologists, social workers, public health, clinical psychologists. I mean, we need all kinds studying this to improve the situation. But thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely.
Do you want me to just pull the questions, or
Sure.
you want to browse them and pick the ones you want?
Yeah, I was looking through my inbox. You know, I've
You want
gotten
me to-
about 100 emails since
Here.
you said that at 2.
I will literally pop it to the top of it right now.
Perfect.
Oh,
I found it. Okay. It just
Oh,
took a
cool.
little scrolling. The format, the journal mentions 24 sessions at 90 minutes, which sounds quite extensive. Yeah. So that actually is on the lower end. So California mandates 50 sessions, which takes about a year. So 24 is actually like on the lower-ish end. I think nationally the average is maybe like 30. So I mean 24 is somewhat lowish. So what they look like in practice, they show up at the probation office. I don't know if anyone knows. Are you all from just like across Iowa? Yeah. So like in Des Moines, it's like the old high school is the probation office. Davenport has a fancy probation office. Fort Dodge has like a relatively nice one. Waterloo has the Fresh Start Women's Center. So I've been all around Iowa at all these places, and they look very different, but you know, they're just a building. And the men, they go in, they have to pay. It looks a little bit different at each site, but they have to pay $25 each session. If they cannot pay, they can attend, and it doesn't count against them, but they have to pay before they ultimately are counted a completer. They have to pay for all the sessions. So that has created some problems over the years. I mean, I don't, you know, people, when I train my program in different states, they're like, well, how much should we charge? And I was like, okay, I don't write those policies. That's not my decision. Like, that's y'all's decision. Like, if it was up to me, they wouldn't pay because I want them to get my program. And one of the number one reasons that they don't show up is because they don't have the money. So I would rather them show up and get the program than not come because they don't have the cash. Anyway, that's another soapbox. So they pay their money. They come in and sit down. They're in an average of groups of about, I would say 10 is the average. I told the Department of Corrections not to go over 15. Once you get over 15, it is unwieldy and you start losing people. So some of them do go over that, but research shows 8 to 10 is actually ideal for groups. But I know that that's not logistically possible. They have to get more people in because otherwise they just sit on the wait list. And we don't want someone who's been violent toward their partner, who still lives with their partner, to be on a wait list for 6 months to get help, right? So we just let them in. So they typically start with a grounding exercise, you know, just checking in, getting present in the room. That's one of the most important things, because if they're not present, they're not learning. You can only take in new learning when you're in the present moment. So if they're off in their head, if they're not paying attention, if they're grumbling about how she should be here, not me, that's their most common phrase. If they're all in that mindy, heady space, then they're not present and they're not going to learn from what you're teaching them that night. So they get present. They go around and usually talk about, something that they did this last week that was consistent with their values. And then they learn, whatever it is that night. So they go through learning about, healthy ways of managing your emotions, recognizing your thoughts, choosing what's important to you, living your life according to what's important to you, as opposed to just what your thoughts and emotions are telling you in the moment, because that may not be helpful. We teach them about healthy masculinity. We're not telling them to not be masculine. That's not the point. It's, can we have a healthy relationship with our masculinity? And, can you, like, most of them say they want to be a provider. Most of them have kids. I think something like 70 to 80% of them have kids. And here's an interesting fact. Almost all of them will buy into doing this program and staying committed for their kids, not for their partner. That was kind of shocking for me to learn at the beginning, because I was like, don't you want a healthy, intimate, loving relationship? No, that's not motivating for them. And, it makes sense, right? Because most of them didn't grow up seeing models of a healthy, loving relationship between a man and a woman, or a marriage. That's not what they grew up with. So like, they don't even have like contact with that in the abstract. And so it makes sense that that's not going to be motivating for them, because they don't even know what that is in practice. But they will say that they want to be a good dad, they want to be in their kids' lives, and that's their number one motivation. For better or for worse.
If you want, I did synthesize them into 5.
Okay.
So the next one would be, how does psychological inflexibility relate to intimate partner violence, and how does it develop?
Yeah. So, psychological inflexibility is really all of those things that I had on the slide. It's kind of a conglomeration of all those things. It's basically, psychological inflexibility is the inability to behave in a way consistent with your values, because you're just responding to your thoughts and emotions on every whim, as opposed to having this like solid sense of self and direction where you can direct your behavior toward what's important to you, regardless of what's going through your head. So like, our philosophy in Active is that, yeah, you're gonna have the thought like, my wife's not listening to me. I can't believe she's doing this. She's not respecting me. She needs to shut up. Okay. Yeah, your mind's gonna do that. Can you treat her with respect anyway? So like the previous program, Duluth would spend all this time saying, don't think that. You can't think that. It's bad to think that. You're a psychopath for thinking that. You're a sexist person for thinking that. Well, so what my research has shown is that the more you tell them to not think it, the more they're going to think it. Because not only, if I told you all to don't think about chocolate cake, what's the first thing you're going to think of?
Yeah.
Right. So telling them not to think bad about their wives is just going to backfire, because you can, okay, don't think about chocolate cake. Okay, I'm not thinking about it. Well, I had to think about it to make sure I wasn't thinking about it.
The first principle in reverse, in child development, like the reverse attention. Like,
right, exactly. Yeah. So, it's interesting that, and this kind of flies in the face of a lot of like, unlearning. There is no unlearning. There's additional learning. Our minds work by addition, not subtraction. You can't just like unlearn something. The neurons are still firing there. You may not use them as much, and that's great. And they'll get like, less powerful over time. But like, if I told you to forget English, would you be able to forget English? Or if I said Mary had a little, what popped into your head?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you're not going to, if I told you, okay, forget that. Don't think about Mary had a little lamb ever. Well, it's already in there. Like, so, that's kind of the approach we take with a lot of like the thoughts and beliefs that these guys have, is that like they're programmed in there. No, do we think that's a good thing? No, but like we can't perform lobotomies. So it's about additional learning. It's new learning. Is, can you have that thought that your wife must respect you and treat her with respect anyway?
And I think that would go really nice into, and we can talk about this, but cognitivism, literally, or I might be using the wrong one, but I do feel it fits with one of the learning theories, which would just kind of take the approach of like, you're going to think it anyway, so how can you respond differently? I like that. So would the opposite be psychological flexibility, or is that not a true opposite?
Right. So that's
So
behaving consistent with your values despite what thoughts and emotions come up. That's psychological flexibility.
So the question then is, what concrete strategies could educators, practitioners, policymakers use to prevent psychological inflexibility and promote psychological flexibility?
Well, so I think the number one thing is trauma prevention, ACEs prevention. That's by far the number one thing. At least when it comes to psychological flexibility of the whole world, I don't know, maybe it'd be something else, but like for this group of folks is prevention of ACEs. We're all psychologically inflexible to some extent. That's kind of the nature of our mind. Our minds are designed to be hypervigilant of threat, and to make associations of, and our brain is constantly predicting what's going to happen next. That's how our brain works. And we're it's looking for threat, for it has negative bias. All of us, that's how our brains work. Now, some more than others, right? So that we have evolved that way, right? We've evolved to be like the most hypervigilant, anxious generation ever, because our ancestors who weren't anxious, they got eaten and didn't pass on their genes. So it's the anxious people who passed on their genes because they were still alive. Lucky us. So, in some respects, that's the origin of psychological inflexibility, is our brain's hypervigilance on survival, which is its job. But well-being is not the same. Our brain wants us alive, not necessarily happy. So we are responsible for the happiness, well-being, healthy part, because that's not its natural inclination. Again, some people have it easier than others. I want to acknowledge that.
Amy also teaches happiness across the list.
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit into, and see, this you can kind of see how I evolved into teaching happiness. People are like, you research domestic violence, but teach happiness? How? There's a link, I promise. And you kind of just saw it a little bit.
My other ones in the synthesizer are kind of the same. Before, anyone sitting on here that didn't feel their question was asked or represented, want to speak up?
The one in the chat, yeah, paying for it is punitive. Absolutely. That's why I would rather them not collect payment, but it's viewed as like accountability, all that stuff. The corrections just has a different view of things than I do, and that's fine.
Scan, or while they're seeing if anyone has a resulting question, you want to scan over the big list and see if there's any ones that felt missed.
Oh, there's one about high school students, males in particular. I think the question is, what can educators do to get the males to let their guard down, express their feelings, let them know that change can be good? Model it. Number one thing. That's what it's probably like best for men to model it. That's probably like the number one thing, is for them to see men doing it. But hey, females second best. That's not a good thing to say. You know what I mean?
Person willing to be there, second best.
Yes. That's good too, to model it. Because if you're not doing it, then why would they do it? They're going to see more of what you do than what you say. I'm sure you all know that, but just a reminder, we all could use a reminder of basic things sometimes, right? And you modeling it is more powerful than anything you'll say to them. So,
was there any other questions for Dr. Zarling?
I loved all the questions, everybody. Thank you for listening to me go on about my passion.
No, it was really interesting, and it was really interesting. I know classroom management is not the same as, partner violence. It is interesting to think about, like even just reframing the correction officers, like, yeah, I guess the best way to just is not be judgmental of that student or why they did that behavior, because you're right, absolutely right. Shaming has never worked on anyone to change anything ever. It's only just made them hide it. So.
Right, exactly. Right. And it makes them pull more away from people when they feel that. Yeah. Okay.
Thank
I
you.
will, yes, thank you. I now have 3 kids to attend to, so
Okay.
I am going to go do that. It was lovely to see you all, and maybe I'll see you again sometime.
All right, sounds good.
All right, bye.
And bye. And then I'd love to introduce you to, I'm going to spotlight you, Injiang Hung. Well, did I say your last name right? I did.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I should be more aware of that than the average person with my crazy last name, but I'm very sorry. So she's my new neighbor at work. She has just become a professor at Iowa State, and she I really was intrigued at her research, especially related, to FCS, because we used to be like way back in the day to domestic sciences. So I feel like you're a direct connection. How would you like to do this? Would you like to present, or would you like them to ask you questions?
I can do the same formatting. So present my
Sounds
and then-
good. You should be a host, and I'll monitor chat.
Okay, thank you. I will try to share my screen. Okay, so how does this work? Oops. Share screen. Then oh, okay, that's not the screen that I want to show. Are you seeing the my script? Oh. So is it good, or I can't hear anyone. Can anyone speak up for me?
I apologize. I didn't realize I muted. No, we see the slide, not your notes. So you're perfect on our end.
Thank you. Okay. So yeah, hello everyone. Thank you for your kind introduction, and thank you for having me today. I'm truly excited to oops. Sorry. I'm navigating between different views. It's confused. Okay. So yeah, I'm truly excited and honored to meet you all here and present my work today. Just a general introduction of myself. Like, I'm a researcher who studies work and family across the life course and older adult well-being in general. And in many of my research, I study the ways gender norms manifest in our lives. And I often look into domestic responsibilities such as housework and caregiving as strategic sites for my research. And the paper that I'd like to present today is titled Gender and Housework in the Post-Retirement Context, Longitudinal Evidence from the US. This is a collaborative project with Dr. Jang-Eun Lee, who's also in the ISU HDFS, and Dr. Joseph Speck. Before I jump in, I want to ask all of you this question: what does retirement mean to you? Some people think of retirement as being freed from lifetime of paid labor, but what happens to the unpaid labor, like housework? Does it ever stop or diminish after retirement? In this paper, we asked the question, does the gender inequality in housework get any better after retirement? And here's a quick pitch for why this question matters. Division of housework is a major source of gender inequality in old age, with negative consequences such as depressive symptoms as well as marital distress. Sadly, we all know that wives do the bulk of housework, which is evident in this Gallup survey of different gender married couples. But if you break down the type of housework, there are some chores that husbands do more of. In yard work, car maintenance, and making financial decisions, husbands do more than wives. This figure then makes us wonder about 2 points. So first, what's the huge gender imbalance in the overall workload? So the amount of time spent on housework in general. And second, who gets to do what task? there are theories on these questions, and broadly speaking, there are perspectives that place more or less emphasis on gender. On the one hand, gender-based theories emphasize the role of gender expectations to explain who does more chores and who does what type of chores. Wives do more chores than husband because housework is a woman's domain, and wives choose to do what's traditionally considered feminine, such as cooking and shopping, while husbands engage in masculine chores such as yard work. On the other hand, there's another theory, resource-based theory, that says, nope, it's not about gender, but it's more about the amount of resources that you have. You simply do more chores if you have more time available. And you can bargain out of housework if you earn more money than your partner, or if you have the money to outsource the chores. Likewise, people don't do chores based on gendered meanings. So in retirement, would gender norms continue to haunt the older couples? Or would the gender gap fade away eventually? Prior research has shown that the partner who retires does take up more housework, although there are small gender differences here and there. But what hasn't really been considered before, though, is that retirement changes many other things. Yet retirement can change how you split the unpleasant pie that housework is. But it also changes the overall size of that pie. So not just about the splitting, but about the growth of the pie. Retirement means less income, so outsourcing becomes harder. And there's much more free time freed up from the paid labor, so to do housework. And if you move to a smaller place after retirement, which is a common pattern, it means that you need to spend more time tidying up. So you're likely to have a bigger pie to split in the post-retirement context. Also, the pie composition might change too. Certain tasks such as cooking might increase more than, say, yard work. If women really do pick up all the feminine duties, this increased cooking responsibility could fall on wives rather than husbands. Then that's going to make the status quo of gender inequality even worse. So incorporating this important nuance, we modify the old question that was asked in the prior literature of whether retirement makes couples more egalitarian. And our new question is retirement an equalizer net of all these changing demands for different types of housework? So taking stock, we built the following hypothesis informed by theories about husband's retirement, feminine chore demands, and masculine chore demands. We do the wife's retirement too, but then for the sake of time, I'm gonna focus on the husband's retirement here. And we also look at all different combinations among them, and we have these predictions. Gender inequality will improve when husbands retire. Gender inequality will improve when there are more masculine chores to be done because husbands pick up more of that. Gender inequality will worsen when there are more feminine chores to be done because wives pick up that because of the gender expectation. The improvement in the gender inequality associated with masculine chores will be even greater when the husband is retired because the husband has free time and availability, as well as is the type of chores that the husbands like. And to test this hypothesis, we draw from a secondary data called Health and Retirement Study that is nationally representative of Americans of ages 50 and older. In particular, the Consumption and Activities Mail Survey portion of the survey asked about respondent time use, including the amount of time they spend on housework. So for example, this data set, let us examine how many hours the survey respondents spent last week doing shopping or running errands, preparing meals and cleaning up, etc. And from this data set, we focus on different gender dual earning married couples. We know this is a very narrow focus, but for conceptual clarity, we had to really trim it down to like manageable sample because we expected differences and heterogeneity across different type of living arrangement and marital status and partnership status and earning arrangement. And we use the method called fixed effects regressions to examine what contributes to gender inequality in time spent on housework. Just to give you a general idea, this method allows us to focus on any changes in the housework over time within each couple. And we do this because we suspected that each couple has different couple dynamics that might hinder us from seeing the generalizable patterns clearly, so that we can focus on the within change of a couple. Among many different contributors to the gender inequality in housework, we paid special attention to couples' retirement arrangements, whether neither or both retired or just one retired, and if so, who was retired, as well as the household's demands for masculine or feminine type chores. And here's how we operationalize some concepts. What we call gender inequality in housework was captured by the total amount of hours a wife spent on housework minus husband's hours spent on housework. So the greater values indicated greater gender inequality and therefore are bad. Yeah. Okay, so I will skip through that. And here's what our data showed. We call a task feminine when, on average, wives spend more time on it than husbands do, and vice versa. As you can see from here, wives spend almost 9 hours per week preparing for meals, while husbands only spend a third of that time. Similar patterns for cleaning also appeared. Husbands did about a third of wife work. And the gender inequality was even worse in laundry. In contrast, husband did much more than 3 times the amount of wives did for the vehicle maintenance. So in our data set, we could confirm that masculine chores consisted of car maintenance, yard work, and home maintenance. And feminine chores consisted of cleaning, meal preparation, shopping, and laundry. And these patterns from our data were indeed very well aligned with the prior definition of masculine and feminine chores in prior research. So does husband's retirement really help? At least based on this graph that we created from our data set, it does seem to be related to the lowest level of gender inequality right there in the, yeah. But this masks the fact that there are many other things happening, like changing economic circumstances for the couple or health statuses of the spouses, and most importantly, changing level of home production or the changing demands for housework. Upon retirement, all these things are happening at the same time. In other words, we might be conflating a whole slew of other things with retirement per se. So that's why we employed the previous method that we introduced, the fixed effects model, controlling for any other factors. And I have a bunch of statistical estimates for my analysis, but for the sake of time, I'll go straight to something more straightforward to see. And this graph shows the predicted difference in the amount of housework done by wives versus husband, depending on how much feminine chores there was and whether the husband was retired or wife was retired or both were retired or neither. So on the x-axis, we have the amount of feminine type chores in the housework, things like cooking, cleaning, and laundry. And on the y-axis, we have the gender gap score in housework, how much more wives are doing compared to husbands. So the higher, the worse gender inequality. And each retirement arrangement is color and shape coded, as you can see from the legend in the bottom. First of all the lines slope upward, which mean that as feminine chores increase, the total amount of demand for feminine chores in the couple has increases, the gender inequality worsens, and wives consistently take on more of the work. And at the worst case scenario, which is at the extreme level of demands for a feminine task, which is 40 plus hours of feminine tasks to be done. Oh, am I clicking through it? Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, it's like slightly misaligned. When the wives were only retired, compared to any other retirement arrangements, the gender inequality, oops, yeah, the gender inequality was substantially greater. So you can see that the red line, the red dot lies above all the different lines and the same vertical line. So the red is above yellow, blue, and green. Yeah, and this indicated that the confluence of extreme demand for feminine tasks as well as wife solo retirement was linked with the greatest gap in gender inequality. And now let's look at the demands for masculine tasks. The only difference from the previous figure is that now the x-axis shows level of household demands for masculine tasks rather than feminine tasks, and everything else is the same. Here, we don't have the same upward trend overall. And a few things to notice from here. First of all, gender inequality in the case of husband solo retirement doesn't look very different from other arrangement. As you can see, the husband solo retirement is green line, and in each vertical strips, like the green line, you can't really tell the difference, like in terms of the vertical height of the green from the other points, and that's regardless of like what level of like masculine chores are demanded, like at the 0 or less hours, or like 10 to no 10 or less hours, or like 10 to 20 hours, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, it doesn't matter. The green doesn't stand out. Even though, and this is the case, even though we expected husband's retirement could free up the time to contribute more to housework and reduce gender inequality, but that was hardly the case. In other words, the husband's retirement didn't mean a thing for gender inequality. And there was one exception, however, but in the wrong direction, which was when the demands for masculine chores was the highest at 40 plus hours per week. In the case of husband solo retirement, as I put in the box, although it's still below the red box that indicates wives only retirement, but still, the gender inequality increased compared to the other two dots, like the yellow and the blue dot below, lying way below the green. You can see that the green dot is associated with a higher gender gap score, which is worse inequality. So yeah, in the case of husband solo retirement, the gender inequality increased rather than decreased compared to other arrangement when there was a lot of masculine chores to be done. So in summary, we had the following findings. Retirement isn't a great equalizer per se. On its own, retirement arrangements didn't substantially change the gender gaps in housework, and inequality persisted unless chore demands were low. And chore type matters more than retirement status. So feminine type chores, cooking, cleaning, and laundry, consistently pushed inequality upward, while masculine type chores, yard work, and repairs sometimes help reduce the gap, but only under certain circumstances. For example, the masculine chore demand was pretty low, below 40 plus hours. And lastly, gender norms still shape behavior. So even with more free time after retirement, couples largely stuck to traditional divisions, showing that ingrained gender scripts outweigh the shift in work status. And here's some food for thought. Given that the amount of demands for housework matters more than retirement status per se, how do these aging-related changes sound to you? So downsizing, residential relocation, they all sound innocuous in terms of gender dynamics, but are they really innocuous in terms of gender dynamics? Also, women do most of caregiving, so the gender inequality in the housework that we just saw is just the tip of an iceberg. So what can we do to help? Our findings suggest that affordable outsourcing options for core household chores, such as cooking and shopping, can be helpful for older adults, not only for their consumption benefits, but also for their gender egalitarian lifestyle. And that wraps my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. One of the things that I'm looking across questions that, do you have any recommendations for how people can go about negotiating some of these housework tasks?
Yeah, because our paper's whole thrust was about like the amount of housework to be done and what type. I think that like coming up with like some sort of like inventory system or something, like come up with a list of like, oh, what type of, not just the like a total amount that you expect to do, but also expect to do in what type of work. And really closely thinking through like what do you think this item is like usually falls under, like in terms of gender norms, like in gender encoded categorization of tasks. And yeah, coming up with that inventory system would be nice. And yeah, communicating it with the spouse way before, spouse or partner, way before either one of them retire would be important. Like, because once retirement, like once one person retires, like it can set the dynamics and it can create a momentum and it can last forever. Although like the evidence is against that. Usually in the bad term, because like when husband retires only, it's been found that like they do more, but then when the wife retires, it just reverts back. So
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, I
It's a
know.
laughs. Yeah.
That was in Germany, so let's stay hopeful for US.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I do want to point out that might not be for everyone here, I didn't really know until I started my own PhD classes. But the thing I want you to notice about Dr. Zarling and Dr. Huang's research is Dr. Zarling is doing mostly a qualitative research. And what's really interesting about Dr. Huang's research is she's doing a quantitative, which is really usually hard to do with human subjects because you have to make your questions very, very specific. So like that's what's really intriguing about this study to me is that like when you said like I would have to go with a really narrow focus, you're talking about participants still in the thousands, which is amazing. Like I think Dr. Darlings has 60 participants maybe total, but like that's what she's talking about. So if you're talking about more the individual versus the zoomed out sociological, Dr. Huang's research has a lot more like big sociological implications. Like she's really measuring a lot of people when she's doing that. With that, anyone want to ask their questions out loud?
Oh, I haven't been checking the chat box at all.
So
So
no, that's okay. Most people had left it. I just said why I included this on family studies because you could kind of look at your work either as family studies or as generational or as lifespan development, but I chose it under family studies because I feel like, you know, evaluating the divisions of domestic labor is really kind of rooted more in gendered roles and whether you're the wife or mother or husband or father versus like you don't suddenly, although it is interesting because of retirement, because you also evaluate it from it could go either way is my point, but I thought it was really interesting under the family studies model.
and I'm really honored to be included in this session.
Well, I really appreciate that you were. Have you done any work with other generations and noticed any differences in that? Or what do you think, how do you think younger generations will be in regards to these kind of things?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so our research is limited in that we mostly look at the oh, I'm blinking on the term. So the boomers, yeah.
Yeah.
And there were a really small group of Gen X, I believe, especially the wives who tended to be younger than the husbands.
Oh.
But it's like a small enough, so we didn't like really make a big distinction out of it. But I think we did like separate the different groups and like look at the differences, but like no substantial changes in our like qualitative findings it just applied to all generations. But then that being said, there are many more generations coming, and yeah, they are when they come to the age of considering retirement. I hope things will change. There are like hopeful findings that like the gender attitudes are like changing in the better direction for the younger generations. But that being said, I've seen like many researchers complaining about like attitudes uh, don't necessarily translate into behaviors and like
Oh,
like
interesting.
it's like lip service like
Yeah.
they talk about like I the other day I was like reading about like the fatherhood like the new this is not about like the couple dynamics but also like parenting and like caregiving is also highly gendered.
Yeah.
Yeah this
If you remember where you were reading, that's another possible focus. So if you send me that, I'll put that in that one too.
yeah is it okay that I send afterwards because I can't
Yeah,
remember.
absolutely, absolutely. Like even tomorrow, but like fatherhood, the role of fatherhood is something one that is an offering that they could focus on too. So, but yes,
Yes, I will make sure to send it.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, there's like this whole like rise of new fatherhood, like the idea of new fatherhood and active parenting among fathers, like is like lip service, and nothing really like translate into tangible outcomes. Yeah, so
Interesting.
yeah, to the extent the attitudes really reflect yeah get channel into the behavior, then I would say the future is brighter. Yeah, I can only make conjectures because my research doesn't really address the new generations.
Well, yeah, it was. Did you notice any differences in regional area, or did the
Oh,
study measure that?
yeah, that's a also another great point. We didn't pay any attention to the
Hmm.
geographic area. We could have, but then like we were already having too much on our hands and like we on our plate, and we were like, oh no, that's enough. Simplify it.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I think that is an interesting point because different regions, especially the broader regional differences, like the South or the North, like East Coast, West Coast versus like Midwest, like South, that kind of broader categorization may also like have different implications for like gender attitudes and gender norms. What is like more considered more normative in those areas, as well as I feel like it might have different residential patterns.
Hmm. Interesting.
And as we kind of guess based on our findings, like the whether you downsize like after you retire or like what type of residential areas you move to, like those can also like have implications for the gender inequality because like that can also affect the amount of work to be done in different type of task. Like, do you really have the garden? No, garden, sorry, yard and garden. Oh my gosh, I mixed up. So do you really have the garden to take care of? You need to have a garden to do the yard work, right? And there is a research that I also came across the other day about like how the residential setting really affects the amount of work that you do in terms of like how the type and amount of housework that you do.
Well, and it was really interesting to me that downsizing actually means you have to clean up more. When I was saying like, oh yeah, if you downsize, you probably do have to clean up more because you have less space to go around.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Anyone else have any other questions you want to? I've already kept you like, yeah.
I kind of wanted to comment on the attitudes. There was a sociology book called The Second Shift.
Oh yes, I love that book.
Yes, I do too. And I think it highlights how people say that they're not traditional, but when they actually look at like the figures, it shows to be like more traditional where women are actually doing more than men in regards to like working and doing more household stuff. So,
Yeah. Thank you for the point because
yeah.
book and like I really love the idea of like a family myth that they're building and like this is they already have predetermined idea of like what it should be like and stuff and even if feels unfair, or like they kind of come up exposed to justify what's happening as like kind of fair, and like I'm okay with this type of stuff. Like even though like women, they do much more, they feel it's unfair, but they kind of try hard to erase that it's unfair and like believe that, oh yeah, because like he's doing this much more, I this is fair in other terms. And yeah, I thank you for bringing the book. I yeah, it's a seminal work.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Well, I really, really appreciated having both perspectives and thinking about this in new. And I will see you in the office.
Yeah. Thank you for having
Good
me.
night. All
Yeah,
right.
I'll see you all.
Thank you. Everyone else, I know I promised you a break, so can we break until 7:15 and then finish up with things then? Is that a good break? Okay, we're gonna break till 7:15. Missy, I remember you had a question about something, but I don't remember about what. And I can also leave you alone while you're eating. It's totally great, but I went to the bathroom.
Really good. Yeah, so I don't know if it's just me being super, super dense and I'm just like not to wrap my head around this, but so I kind of mapped it out that I have the content areas, right? Family studies, resource management,
Yes.
parenting, child development, all of those.
Yes.
I need to choose one of those to dig deeper into.
No, I picked the content area. You need to pick a topic in family studies. We're focusing on family studies this week. And we're going to
Okay.
visit all of those eventually.
Okay.
So
So
it's
what exactly am I going to do my instructional plan on?
whatever you want to dig deeper into family studies. So the two we kind of showed you about would be
Okay.
like domestic
Oh,
violence.
okay. So each of these are going to get one, 2, 3,
Yes, yeah,
5, 6,
yeah.
7. I will have 7 of them by the time I'm done.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
You'll have 7 concepts.
Yeah.
You will not
Okay.
have 7 pedagogical focuses anymore because I had to reduce one. And so
Yep.
I'm getting rid of making thinking visible. And so I'm gonna do like there's gonna be one unit now that's gonna be 3 weeks long instead of 2, and it'll just be like we're gonna focus on formative assessment and we're gonna apply that first to child or parenting development and then also lifespan development, because I thought those are the two that like those are really the two where you want to think about like how do we find out what people are thinking, you know?
Okay. So then when I do my instructional plan for each one of these, I am doing that Iowa State lesson plan
Yep.
format.
So I will show that to you. We all decided that we wanted to do concept, so I reduced it.
Okay.
So it'll be concept and set. And then one of those in joint collaboration between like, these are the ones I feel most energized doing. And I'm like, this is the idea that geeks me the most out. You're going to
Yep.
do one of those and like you'll have a couple days before Thanksgiving break and then the week after Thanksgiving break. And honestly, you can take up until we have the Zoom class, which will be that Wednesday of finals week. You're going to develop one of those into a real instructional plan. So
So what does it look, whatever I need to turn into you based on family studies, what does that look like exactly?
I'll show everyone that.
Okay.
concept.
Okay. Like, is there so many different pieces here? And it feels
Okay, so in general, there's
one.
meant to be 4
Okay.
pieces,
okay.
2 classes.
Yes. Okay.
So class, you come, like right now, you're getting 10 points. So
Yep.
that's
Okay.
2 things off the thing. But class was meant to alternate between pedagogical focus and content area.
Okay.
This one is kind of sandwiched together because
Mhm.
I was sick. And so
Okay.
instead, when you answered those questions about this, like I was
Uh-huh.
going to focus on how to orient class. So that's what is doing those 10 points. But in the future, like you come to class, like when we start again the next Wednesday on the 10th, it'll be about AI. And then after AI, you're going to have reflection points related to exploring an AI tool, and then dip your
Yep.
toe in. That'll be kind of the preview of who's coming around for the guest speakers. And when
Okay.
you answer those questions, the dip your toe in, that gets you 5 points. Then after that guest speaker, now here you'll have a dive deeper. So on that page, I picked like, okay, so you really geeked out about this topic. These are the 2 things you do. And then that one really, you just have to, like I gave options for what you do there. You just like write me a reflection of what you learned from the video, etc.
Mhm.
And then the last thing you do is you take that pedagogical focus and that topic you picked that you learned more about, you stitch them together into an idea for a concept for a lesson plan that you might teach.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Is that,
Yes.
and really, if you didn't know to orient yourself by modules, like I don't know how to unroll, like it probably came out in weird bits and pieces that didn't make sense.
Well, and I've taken a couple, and I actually even took a Canvas course because, on how to set up Canvas and all of this kind of stuff. So I know how to do it. Like the Canvas isn't what is bothering, like, I just
Well,
feel that
I will
with
tell you that I struggle to make Canvas do the things I want to do, especially like when in my life, like I like to be like, okay, turn in a draft, like let's do iterative. Canvas does not always.
And I just feel getting this on state minimums that I don't have a lot of the missing pieces that I need, like the Iowa State lesson plan format and just, all of this different stuff.
No,
So
you'll be able to do it. And when we come to the Iowa State lesson plan format, I'll really help you. Like so I don't have class on that week after Thanksgiving break. And that's so if you want to like schedule one-on-one time with me to literally go like, okay, help me do this part, help me do this part.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah. Okay. And I did print it and I looked at it and all the little bits and pieces are fine. Like stuff
Well,
that I've done.
and really now take that thing and like shove it to the side because that is what you'll need for the final one.
For the
but
final, yeah.
greatly reduced now on a weekly basis
Yep.
or
Okay.
a bi-weekly basis. Yeah.
And my best bet then is since I teach parenting, child development, textiles, apparel, and I teach a foods 1 and foods 2. So
Yeah.
my best bet is to probably dig into one of those for my instructional plan.
Right.
Create
Right.
something
And
that I can
that's
actually
really-
use.
Right, correct. But I also do want to say, because somebody else posted like they only teach 2 classes, I do want you to be aware that you could. So I posted the content areas relevant to family studies, but like if you really don't teach a family studies class, you can pick from like the foods and do a family studies topic. I just don't have necessarily good research linked to that, but like for somebody who only teaches a food class, my integration of family studies might be like doing a lesson on do families need to eat together, sit down and eat together. Like,
Yep.
'cause that's a new research thing and that there's like different topics and so you don't have to at the same time, like this is my awareness that like even on state minimums, like you kind of have to teach it no matter what. So this is how do I like come up with an innovative idea and then like try to figure out. And I also hope that AI next week will help us speed through a lot of things.
I love AI I even use it for, I'm a title teacher in the afternoon for the elementary. So I use AI for creating just sentences with blends and diagraphs. Like it's amazing.
Well, and truly, if you use more tools than I present next week,
Mhm.
I'm ready to share them because I'm still learning. Like, it's just
And
about
I
class.
actually, I don't know if you've heard of Brisk teaching at all.
No.
Brisk teaching. Yep. And what I did with Dr. Ziering's her article is that I was all over the place with softball for my daughter. So I actually downloaded it to Brisk teaching and it turned it into a podcast that I could listen to in the car.
Brisk, B-R-I-S-K.
Yep.
Okay,
BRISK.
Okay, I'm gonna look into that one. I knew about Magic School.
can-
I'm loving Magic
Oh,
School.
I love Magic School too, but yeah,
Yeah.
Brisk teaching is amazing. When
And
I was an English teacher, I would upload the rubric and I could do glow and grows on the students' papers just in minutes because it knew my expectation. And it just, it's just wild.
I'm actually struggling right now. So because I'm at the dissertation point of my
Mhm.
PhD, and I've been sitting at my dissertation point for a while. In fact, long enough to like be like, I'm not focused on male teachers anymore. I'm really just gonna do it on A&T teacher prep. But I downloaded cider.ai and I cannot figure out how to make it function for me. And I don't know if I'm just stupid or what, but it's supposed to be better for like synthesizing research. And I just Anna's back here. This is way better than Magic School AI. I
Yes.
haven't even heard it. Okay,
It's awesome.
I guess for anyone listening, throw out anything that you want me to look at for AI or that you know, because I'm game for it. I know Magic School. I'm gonna chat GPT different with DIFFRT is meant to be a differentiation tool, and I've really only found it to be good for making readings like more synthesized. I wish it was a little bit better than that, but I'll take any and all help. It does not have to be a Laura only led session next week, because whatever you find useful, I want to put on this list, because I am actually, so the second part of this is I'm actually developing, not for Iowa State, but for Drake's teacher prep people. I'm actually developing a list of resource that we're going to start using this with your students, because it's like so hard, right? If you're old like me, you're like so not aware of them, and like it takes its own dive in. But this was meant for like giving future teacher students, like teacher educators of future teacher students, like start teaching your kids to use these tools.
Mhm.
I love that.
I do personally disagree with like teaching the students to use AI. Because the reason for that is like they are not already good enough with the content to recognize when AI is hallucinating. and when it's not giving them good stuff. And they already have the perception that AI is just an answer machine.
Yes.
So telling the student, here, go use this AI is sort of like a secondary reinforcement of that belief. Oh, the teacher is telling me to go to the answer machine.
Yeah.
Therefore, the answer machine must be unerringly correct.
And I
So I'm
definitely
not-
experienced that. So like, yeah,
Yeah.
my cognitive breakdown that I'm trying to like manage is how do I, if you've never, like I was old school, I had to learn how to old school lesson plan and make all the things. So now my 20% is valuable. But if
Yep.
you only learn to add and subtract using a calculator,
Yeah.
you can't know
Like,
that the
it's-
calculator is throwing you something back wrong. And I
The
don't know
way
how to
that we should
bridge
be
that
teaching
gap.
students, the way that we should be teaching students to use AI is actually like really similar to, or should be similar in the way that we were ever teaching computer skills to begin with. Like they have to actually like understand what AI actually does. Like they don't know what a large language model is. They don't know how it functions, how it operates. So again, they just think it's an answer machine.
Correct.
And they are not considering, like, our kids are in high school. They are not content matter experts yet. They
Oh,
can't recognize good responses from bad. They can't, they do not have the ability to do the 20% of work,
no,
right?
and
If it's like the 80-20 rule, they don't have the ability to even do that 20%. So
I
just,
agree with you. So
Yeah.
I want to say that I want to be very distinct. I am not all about teaching teachers to use AI with their students.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
about teaching future teachers
Gotcha.
to
Okay.
use IA to reduce their workload.
Yeah, over the summer, I did another class for personal finance, and those professors were like, how can you direct your students to use AI in the classroom? And here's all these AIs you can direct them to. And I was like, no, no, I will not do that. They don't know enough about personal finance to know that the Bank of America chatbot is actually giving them good information about loan rates. They don't know.
Well,
So,
but I do think that does bring up the awareness. Like pretty soon, the only way you can limit it is by doing things in person in your class. Because if
yeah.
you give it homework to them to go home, you have no control over what they generate.
So I mean, all districts in Iowa are supposed to have like some way that they are limiting cell phones in the classroom.
Yes.
In our
How's that going
district,
for everyone, by the way? It sounds like the worst thing in the world. I don't want to be biased.
it's so great. It's
It was good.
amazing.
Yeah, it's
The
great.
biggest problem that teachers in our building have been talking about is that we're going to have to like revise a lot of our
Lots of
lesson
stuff.
plans to come up with like more stuff for the kids to do. So an activity that I would give kids last year to do that would take them 25 minutes because they were constantly like taking breaks to check their cell phones or do this, that, or third or whatever.
Now they get done.
Now they're actually locked in. It's no more, no, Miss H, I'm locked in. I'm locking in. I'm getting this done. Like, they actually are just locked in and they're getting it done.
Well,
And they're-
I guess the hardest part for me, I believe in 100% the like effects of it, but how do you get them to physically, like, is there school-wide thing that you're getting them to put their phones away? Or is that you?
It really is like a team effort. So each of us were in our own classrooms. We were kind of given the authority on how we wanted to do it. Either we could take the phones at the beginning of class, or we could just say, if it's out, I'm going to take it or whatever. But the bottom line is that if the phone was out, it gets taken. And if it gets taken so many times, then it gets sent to the district office kind of stuff. So the first day, first period, I had some kids get squirrely about it, about like, you have to put your phone in the holder. But by 8th period of the first day, it was just quiet resignation. And I have not had a single problem since. And I
think
did have,
that's
I did
good.
have like one kid tell me, oh, I don't have my cell phone today. And another kid who was a freshman, obviously, was like, oh, you had your phone last period. What do you mean you don't have it now? And I just looked at him and I was like, hey, they're free to lie to me all they want. The point is that if I see the phone, I will take it and it will go down to the district office and they won't get it for 3 days because that's how long it takes van mail to take things between buildings. And the
That's funny.
kid, their eyes just got like so wide.
Well, I
they
think it
just-
has to be systemic like that because it can't
Yeah.
just be one teacher fighting the good fight.
Yeah. So I think it really is just kind of everybody in the building is really pulling together and the kids know we're serious about it. And it has not been a problem with compliance. we did have, some parents were squirrely about it. But I think it does really help that it's a law.
I'm sorry, like in my experience, half the times it was parents interrupting the learning anyway, texting their kids. And I want to be like, where do you think your kid is from 8 to 3?
I sent home our building required us to send home a letter to parents with like our personal policies. And in my letter, I put like how you can help your student be successful. Please have a discussion with your student about how you recognize you're texting them at your convenience, but they can't have their phone. So they can't text you
Wow.
until passing. And I was just very upfront about like, your kid's not going to be able to get in touch with you. And I gave him my phone number and I was like, if it's really urgent, here's my phone number to my room. You can call and I'll have your student take the call in the room. And I look forward to a parent calling and being like, hey, you need to make sure you take the chicken out because I'm going to make that kid take the call in front of the whole room.
You know, it's going to change the world, I think. I mean, I do think it's overall good. I just didn't know how much it was a headache pain for individual teachers in the classroom. But like, if it is a whole system, I think that's the way it's done.
Yeah. I think that the fact that it's a law has been really helpful because even when parents or kids got squirrely about it, I'm like, hey, take it up with Governor Reynolds.
I do love that, like just kind of being like, yep, wasn't my choice, wasn't it?
Yep.
Okay, so it's 7:16, so I'm gonna kick people through because I'm happy that our speakers were excited, but also just we have things to do. So I'm going to speed right along. In general, I think, Missy, if I can summarize our conversation, because I think it's a good one. There are 6 things every unit to do in this class. 2 of them are classes. You come, you get it. Good. Everyone's good on that point for me. The first Wednesday, second Wednesday, that is hard to like think about, but like I'm thinking about it starting over. So we are in the second Wednesday, even though I'm covering 2 things. But the first Wednesday, I will talk to you about a pedagogical focus. And then you'll probably have readings and a reflection on it. The one being next week with AI you'll explore. Then I want you, before the guest speakers comes, to look at the things the guest speakers are going to be talking about or be thinking about like, okay, these are ideas I could do this on. What do I want to dive deeper into? One thing that Missy brought up for me is I'm using the word content area. We're going to go over all 7 content areas, but within the content area, you're supposed to pick a topic to focus on. So this week's content area is family studies. I proposed 4 things for looking at that: domestic violence, division of household labor, and the other 2 things were in the discussion, but I didn't have guest speakers, but talking about, I think and somebody had a great comment to this on the dip your toe in, because I thought like, wow, yeah, like roles of fathers. Not only is it underemphasized, but the underemphasizing of it just contributes to why fathers have to do less, because we're like, oh, at best you're a bumbling idiot. Woo. Well, I mean, we're typing in that role. And then the last one I put out there was I called it divorce, but it really was co-parenting, because it was a documentary following like children of divorce at their elementary and then their teenage years. You can do something beyond. It's just that I want to make sure that you have like, oh, I'm going to watch this documentary, or I'm going to read this thing, or I'm going to listen to this podcast. Speaking of hot tip for all of you, also coming from Missy, she just put the whole journal article into Briss, and it turned it into a podcast she could listen to while she was running her chores, because I know that's how I live my life, and I'm going to use that one on from now. However you gain the information is good for me. The reason you dip your toe in is that I want you to pick an area to dive deeper into, and I have that due on Friday, but really I just want you to do the dive deeper before you do your instructional plan concept. The dive deeper is one thing that I had the rubric for, but I took your suggestions and I now have the format that you turn in the dive deeper. So the actual learning you do, oh, nope, I don't want the example one, sorry. Here's my other pro tip for you. Once you're done with a module, close it up so it doesn't distract you. It's a little tool on the left here. Close it up. Say bye-bye, module. But the dive deeper. So this is where kind of I'm hoping that everyone has a thought about what they want to do. if it's one of the things that I said, this is what you do over here. You also can sub out something else. If you're worried about it, check with me first. But really, my guidelines remain the same. I just don't want it to be somebody's like biased or personal blog kind of thing. And so if you went with Dr. Huang's thing, there's a Fair Play documentary. She also has a book. And so, oh, those of you asking about like division of labor, the interesting thing about this lady is she made cards. You lay out all the cards with the people that you share a household with, and then you like talk about how to divide these cards up fairly. So that's the really interesting thing about this. This was one about dads. This was one about co-parenting. So your actual learning does do the thing, but I need
Hey,
evidence.
Laura,
Yeah.
I don't think you're sharing your screen anymore, or at least I'm not seeing it.
Well, that would not be helpful at all. Thank you. Thank you for letting me. Oh,
I can see it. I don't know.
I can see your screen, Laura.
is it dive deeper?
Yes.
You see yourselves on my screen.
I see you,
Okay.
and I haven't changed anything since you.
Okay, I'm gonna put you, the rest of you. So if I like look over at you, it's because I'm actually looking at you, but versus when I'm looking at my camera, I'm looking at my second screen. But yeah, this now, does everyone see the dive deeper? Yay, nay?
Yes.
I still don't.
Okay. On Canvas, can you just navigate to dive
Yes,
deeper?
well,
So I synthesized what people gave me for bets. Short paper or 3-paragraph reflection. I know that's very different. If it's like a paper, I'm expecting it double spaced reflection. Somebody said we could annotate the article or document. If you did that, I would expect you to watch the documentary first and then connect it in there. You can record yourself talking to me. You can make a slide deck. You can make a mind map. You can make an infographic. You can make a collage with captions. I just want you to think about how it's best going to suit your learning. The reason I have you dive deeper is you might learn things that you don't carry forward into the lesson plan concept. Does that make sense? You're probably going to learn more than you take to the final lesson plan concept. So I just want you to pause and reflect on what did I learn right here? That's all I want to see here. Yeah. Then the last piece of each week, and I think I did this before, but only one of you, God bless you though, for the person who's like, I think it'd be really good to develop an instructional plan. God bless that person, shout out to you. But there was one person, everyone else really was either like, I can see it either way, or, oh my goodness, my life is overwhelming, so we're going to stick with a concept. That is fair. So this week, your goal is to marry together either behaviorist learning theory, humanist learning theory, cognitism, constructivism, experiential learning theory, or culturally relevant pedagogy, cultural responsive pedagogy with one of those dive deeper topics or another. The thing I don't want you to do is one of these. Family life cycles, healthy versus unhealthy. And it's not because these are bad things. I first of all want you to hear these are not these are good things to teach in the context of a family and consumer sciences classroom. I just know I can go Google healthy versus unhealthy relationships right now, and there's already a lesson plan with resources developed. Does that make sense? I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying that there's wheels existing. Go pick what one of those and don't write your own lesson plan towards it. So I want you to take an innovative concept and put it with this. So there are 2 documents on here, this page. And for those of you who can't see my screen, I am at Create now. Create, integrate a learning theory with family studies topic. We good? We at the same place? Okay, there's 2 things you're going to want here. One of them is the template with all the directions inside, and one of them is the template without the directions inside, so you can fill it out. If somebody needs something other than a doc, let me know. But I think you should be able to like download this and pull it into Google Docs and open it. But this is what you're going to need. For those of you who are familiar, who took 306 with me, this is a pared down version. And if you didn't take 306 at any point, you have questions, let me know. I want standards. I've linked the 2 ones there. I do want to tell you, somebody told me that they teach these 2 classes and like that was really only covered by 2 content areas, and there's a whole bunch in family studies on one of them. So I did point out it doesn't have to be a family studies content area, but you have to make sure that when you get down to that competency standard, it is related to family studies somehow. Thumbs up, thumbs down for making sense. Okay. At this time in class, I would focus, I know you work, so if you work with the state standards intimately, feel free to take from there, but sometimes I think it's, if we're focusing on a content area, it might just be easier to go to the lead standards and pick one from that standpoint and work backwards. I do want the X, X, and XXX level. So you're gonna open up for me. This is kind of annoying, but when you get here, there's 16 areas. This is where I said you don't have to pick, like, I said the areas that connect most to family studies are 1, 2, 6, 7, 12, and 13. I'm leaving parenting for child development and parenting. You can pick from any, but those are the ones most related to. But when you open this up, it actually doesn't open, it downloads, which is kind of annoying. But if you really want, one day you can download them all and just use Control Find to find. Or I'll be honest, guys, throw the document into ChatGPT and ask it for a standard related to topic, and ChatGPT will throw you back standards that, this is one place if you upload the document, ChatGPT won't hallucinate. You just have to not ask it for like a standard that you're not uploading. But when I want the X level, it means I want this level, and this level. So if you pick this one, you pick this one, then this one above, and then the one at the very top. Thumbs up for this is making sense. And the Iowa document's a little bit clearer because it's an Excel document. Okay, cool. Next. You're gonna frame up 2, maybe 3 at the most learning targets at the end of this lesson. And here's another difference in my mind between lesson and instructional plan. A lot of times people think of lesson as being the time period that they're in class with you. That's fine, that's fair. But if it takes you longer to teach the concept, just go on with it. You don't need new standards, you don't need new objectives. You're just saying, it's gonna take me more than one day to get to this point. And that's what you're gonna tell me there. So you're going to state this in student-friendly language. At the end of this time, I can blah, blah, blah. If you need help with that, there are good objective writers out there, but people, a lot of times the learning target is sometimes just a restating of the competency level in the student-friendly language. We good with that? Now, here's the second part. If you're going to say that they can do it, I want you to measure it. So you're going to say like, okay, I'm going to check through this by asking this question, or we're going to have a discussion about this. And at the end of the day, this would be how I test for it. You're not going to develop those things. You're just going to tell me your idea for them. Okay. Materials needed. If you're going to use pre-existing things, I do want you to find them. I can't tell you, I don't want somebody telling me I'm going to find a YouTube video about this, because I can't tell you the amount of times that I'm like, I'm just going to quick find a video about this. And then I spend 3 hours looking for that thing. Find the thing if it exists. If it doesn't, tell me what you have to make. Either tell me what you would create from scratch, or go throw your idea into the AI engine, get your result, and be like, okay, I see this, but this is how I have to edit it. Don't do the editing. Cool? And then like, I want you to think about 2 like different ways you could make it different. And this includes universal design. Universal design says, I'm going to shift the whole thing so it's more accessible to everyone. Kind of like the way that I think about it is, I can use a stall designed for a handicapped individual, but not everyone can use a narrow stall. So if you just had a bathroom full of like larger stalls with bars, like everyone could use them. That's the universal design. In a kitchen, it's like knobs on the front of the stove. So that can be used by somebody in a wheelchair, but anyone could use it. It's just the knobs on the back of the stove, how they're normally designed. So you change the lesson for everyone. The instructional sequence, I just want you to talk to me about how you're going to start it, what you're going to do, how you're going to end it. Then this is the focus. So from that list, you're going to pick one of those things. So you might say, this is a constructivist approach. And you see that because in my lesson, this is how I'm getting them to construct the knowledge. And then this is where you chose your topic of why you're teaching it to secondary students. Because everyone kind of have an idea of the topic they're going to dive deeper into. I know I'm looking like I'm looking off screen, but I'm actually looking at you while I share my screen. An idea for your topic you're going to dive deeper into. And so this is just where you say, this is why I think it's important for people to know about this. Reflection is optional. And then here below, you can see the rubric. It's going to be the same rubric for every time. I really didn't want that to go across the page, but it did. So that is that. But can I have you all take Can you take 3 minutes now to make sure you open this assignment and read the top level of the rubric and make sure you understand, like in there, like this is my be the devil's advocate, poke holes in it, read the top standard of each level and tell me what's not clear. This is why it would be nice to be all on one page. Tell me when you need to be a page down.
Where is this located in Canvas? Because I'm not finding it.
Okay. That is a great question. Under modules, this is under, I didn't update the example ones, although I should have probably done that. I just focused on updating the ones for this week, if that's okay. So this one is under, oh, sorry, you can't see this because that one's not published yet. But this one is under create due September 9th. Thanks for asking that because it is probably. So this part, this table will change unit to unit, but this directions and the rubric will remain the same every single time. And oh, sorry, Heidi, under here, there's two linked things. This is one under instructional plan concept directions.
Okay, thank you. Sorry,
No,
I had
thanks
it
for
scrolled
asking.
down.
Canvas
far
is
enough.
confusing. And what makes sense to me is not always what makes sense to other people. So I'm really, please, if you're ever confused on Canvas, just tell me how, because like, you're not an idiot. You're not an idiot at all.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes, Doreen.
So the chosen topic rationale.
Yes.
So then I go back over to this, and are you looking for the topic being one of those, like,
Yeah.
where am I?
So
The ones that you're like, hey, don't do these bottom ones, do these top ones.
yes. So
The-
like you're
So I would do, maybe the topic would be one of the guest speakers we listened to
right.
today.
Let's say
Is
your
that right?
topic is going to be
Okay.
division of domestic labor.
Yes.
Why did you
Okay.
pick that?
Why did we pick that? I got it.
Why is that important for learners? Well, I think I heard some really great things of like, well, now is how we change the viewpoints of the next generation. So I'm literally working with adolescents. So the only way we're going to get more equitable labor division is if I work with them on it. That one's an easy one, I feel like, to connect to real life and course goals. But like, do try to connect it to careers. Now, I do want to show you if you're connecting it to careers, if you go back here, this one's an easy one to skip over this overview, but this is where you can find, like I've listed out, sorry, my Canvas is jumping around. At the bottom of this page, it's a long thing, but I say like, oh, careers, this could relate to all these things. If that makes sense. And the reason we're really doing that is under the new career cluster model. Like, guys, we've always been taken care of by under CTE, but it's going to become more important than ever and ever and ever that we just really, I know we teach life skills, but we're all just going to have the same message of like, we teach careers that also just happen to be good life skills. Sorry, I'm not being dire. I'm just making you prepared. But yeah. So the dive deeper, if you really feel like I want to do something that you didn't say, if you find the resources and you feel comfortable in them, that's great. You can do that. Including if that person who was on the chat, I don't remember who asked about female intimate partner violence, I did find resources for them. I just don't want to be responsible on a Friday morning for coming up with resources for you when you have the assignment due on Friday evening. Like, I'm not sure I'm going to be good at being on call like that, but I'm happy to help you find them. The create. And again, like, these things can have extensions if they need. I just kind of want to keep everyone moving along in class. So things I will refine before next time is this course schedule and the class point breakdown, because I will literally, instead of just having this model of like, this is how a 2-week goes, I'm just going to map out the whole dates for us until December, telling you what's going to happen when. And I'll have this for the whole thing. And the courses, the points will break, they'll be different because we're focusing on having something for 50 points. And I love that idea, actually. I love everyone's suggestion for how we could modify it. I thought that was really cool and realistic. Are there any questions about the components? All right, this is me doing a PowerPoint in less than 20 minutes. You ready for it? Good thing it's not too profound. So chime in when you have thoughts about anything. I can make this available for you after if you want. I will say, guys, it's not profound. I mean, it is profound somehow. But if you said like there's I think I have to stop and then reshare. I'm sorry. Oh, chat, lots of chat. That's a great question. Simple concept for whatever amount of time it takes you to start a concept and finish it. That might be a lesson, that might be a unit, but don't like it's really just, I don't think it would be a whole unit because you're not just going to do one topic in a unit, but it might be more than one day. But also, I don't need you to like cover what you're doing in every 45-minute period if you're not focusing on this whole 45-minute period. So you're like, okay, day 2, we're just gonna recheck about this, and here's the form of check. There, it's done. Does that make more sense? I don't want you to be bound by the class period so much as like, this is how I'd introduce it, and this is how I check that they got my objectives. Do all lessons. Topics being like fathers, divorce, Margie, you got it. That's what the topics are. The topics that I proposed this time were intimate partner violence, domestic labor, division, roles of father, and co-parenting, or the effects of divorce on children. But they couldn't be other things, just that. Do all lessons need to tie together for the final plan? Wow, it would be really amazing if you could do that, but I have a pretty complex and interconnected brain, and my brain can't even do that. So if you can, go ahead and pull it off. But no, the final lesson plan will just be one out of these 7 concepts. You and I will decide together. Probably you will tell me, like, if you're teaching class, you're going to be like, these could actually benefit these. These I just did because you made me study this content area. And then between the ones that you think would be useful to you, I will say, like, honestly, to me, this sounds the most cool. I'll be honest, I will pick you the one that I think would get you paid most on Teachers Pay Teachers. it may not be easy on you, but I get really geeked out by innovative. So, but if you really, you can sway me too. If you're like, oh, but I'm really just geeked out about developing this one because this, you can sway me. I'm just, yeah, we'll decide it together. For those of you not teaching yet, it's probably going to be the one that just sounds just the most cool pairing. I tried to pair the right pedagogical focuses with the right like areas. So the reason I took learning approaches with family studies is because like a lot of family studies is so like brain, you're thinking about understanding people. Learning theories are about how you think about and understand the world. AI, I paired with consumer resource management because if it, like there's so many things that already exist. So if you're going to focus on something that doesn't exist, I wanted you to have a tool to help you generate it. Formative assessment is going to be paired with parenting and then also lifespan, because a lot of the times we're asking people about their understandings about roles or responsibilities. So that's really where you're like figuring out what people really think. And then from then on there, like critical science is with textiles and apparel, because critical science is really critical thinking. And I think like that would be a great one to apply to sustainability and things like that. I'm wasting time on my PowerPoints, aren't I? Anna asked me, would you prefer to ask for extension or submit what we have and revise after feedback?
So if I, so I also like I adjunct at the
Yeah.
community college, and lots of times like I find that students are more perfectionists than they actually should be. So they ask for extensions because they think they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But usually they do.
Yeah.
And so like personally as an instructor, I prefer for students to give me what they have.
Yeah.
And then I can give them really targeted specific feedback, but that's what works out for me. I don't know for you and your schedule if you would prefer like
so this is where I will, and I'm going to leave this to everyone's. If it's because you're like me and you like meant to spend time on it and then you're in the last minute and you're not spending the time on that it need to, and you're like, no, I could take this further, ask me for an extension. If you're sitting around with it because you're just spinning your wheels, turn it in, revise it. And Anna, I think you had like your perspective is the one that I want. If you're spinning your wheels because you're being a perfectionist, turn the darn thing in. My role as a coach, my role is not a sage, my role is a peer coach. I will help you. The power of two is better than the power of one. I've learned that over and over. And even just working, like I think like a lot of my traditional students feel like they're junior to me, but like they challenge my thinking and they like create the explosive ideas just as much as any of my age peers do. So if you're spinning your wheels, just turn it in. We're all at the same cognitive level according to Piaget. So just do it and then like let me have it take a different perspective to help you move on. But if you're there because you're like me and procrastinate till the last minute and then like, I don't know, things fall apart, ask me for an extension. Like don't just be like, oh, I'm gonna wing it in and then, you know, she's gonna tell me how to make it better. I know that's clear as mud, right? But can y'all kind of like, do you understand the distinction among yourself? Yeah. I'm really not bad with, so here's another thing you need to know about me. When I grade an assignment, I will bulk grade for everything. So if you get a 0 from me, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that has to be a 0. It means I took it off my to-do list. So when you resubmit, if you've gotten a 0 or something, I will see it again on my to-do list and I will look at it again. So never ever take a 0 as like, oh, I'm failing. Give up. All right. I also have things to close, but I think the only one set to close really on its due date is that 5-point dip your toe in. I was thinking like with the lesson plan being worth this many points, nobody's going to die over 5 points. With the recalculations, I'll think about that. And maybe I'll have a way to do it. Just every working teacher out there knows that the makeup is actually more work on the teacher than teaching the original lesson. So as long as everyone like thinks about that through that lens, like y'all did a makeup for me when I was sick. And I appreciate that. So, and I will do that for you. Just use it judiciously. Okay. Any questions about the format of this class before we move on? Because I really don't think that I really have a ton of stuff to elaborate if you all did the reading on the textbook about the learning theories.
I guess I had a question.
Yeah.
So we're doing a lesson plan, but what would be the difference from like our unit assignment to like the final then?
So
Like, what's
the difference is you're making an idea of it, and the final is you actually go and make those things.
Okay, so
And I
our
want you in
final-
particular to be focused on, it doesn't have to be a lesson, or it can be a lesson, but outside of a classroom. So you in particular are a pro studies educator. You can conceive of it as a workshop
yeah, I was
um,
thinking like career development stuff.
or online
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay.
But just this week, we're gonna try to apply one of these pedagogical focuses to a family studies topic. So does everyone see theoretical perspectives? These are the things that I took out of this week's learning that I think could be most easily applied. It doesn't mean that teaching safety is not important. It just means that it's kind of hard to combine teaching safety with family studies. Unless you want to get into the very logistics of like, you know, condom use, but humor. Everything like honestly is a theory because there's not really way to prove the way people learn and think in a widespread model. So these are theories and it's really just applying them. And really want everyone to just think about a way that they learn best. Behaviorism really says that based on the response you get, you're going to repeat something or not. What's important to understand about behaviorism is you can be positively reinforced for negative behavior. So a lot of times people think like, oh, if you like it's positive reinforcement for good behavior. Well, if you have a kid who's throwing a fit and you're like, fine, that's fine, I'm going to buy you a toy, or you eventually let down, that is positive reinforcement for behavior you don't want. Likewise, sometimes we can have positive behaviors that we negatively reinforce. So if every time you come home and, okay, so an example of this with the division of labor, if you ask your partner all the time and they just like kind of grunt or you have to nag them, like it is a negative reinforcement of a positive behavior to ask for healthy division of labor, but because it now is like negative reinforced on you, you're not going to speak up or ask for that again. And I think somebody brought that up in the chat. That's a good one. So that one could easily be applied there. Behaviorism is often used in safety and training certification, but kind of the argument against it is it really tends to limit higher order thinking. Like it doesn't really think about how the person who's getting the response is thinking. It just really deals with like, oh, they were treated this way, so this is how they're going to act and behave. Humanism really focuses on, I can share this PowerPoint, yes. I will post it. Let me post it under today's class, even though it would have been last class. And I could also put it in announcements. Or I can like make it its own, I'll make it its own file under the module. How about that? So when you go to modules and you expand it, it's its own file. It'll say PowerPoint. So this one really, humanist really focuses on like, what does the individual want to do? And that again can apply to so many of these things because humanists really like does take into account, like when she talks about like not being punitive to offenders, like, yeah, they did horrible things. But if you could really be like, okay, but you're a human and this is why you're making this choice, but maybe what other choice can we make? That's kind of the humanist perspective. Humanism really is the root of adult learning theory, which is really that learning continues beyond the classroom K through 12. Cognitism focuses on how you actively process and make sense of information. It involves like prompts to scaffold your thinking or pointing out sequences, or advanced organizers. A way of cognitivism might be, if you've ever seen these cards or you watched the documentary on Eve Rodinsky, cognitivism is like laying out these cards and deciding who gets what task. Or cognitivism in like divorce and co-parenting is really thinking about, okay, what is the what do we want for our child and what are we going to do based on it? Or for a kid in like this situation that are tugging war between parents, it's really like being like, okay, well, I know this is not fair to me, but why is my mom acting this way, or why is my dad acting this way, and kind of stepping outside the situation. Constructivism, what I like about this is it's like literally building things. So the idea here is you take what you already know and then you build upon it. So in the domestic violence, this might be taking like oh, what's a situation where you have like not lost your temper? What did you do? Okay, well, can we like add that to here? Or can we apply that here? It is very much in the situated learning. So you have to take things that happened other places and get them to put it in this place. Is anyone? So like a lot of times in a lab, we demo it, and that's a constructivism because we demo it and then they do it. And then like, if you really got a nice overlapping, they do it on their own. Experiential really says like, you might know the outcome already, but the best way for them to learn it is to like set up that aha moment you had. And so experiential says you don't like give them a worksheet and lead them to the conclusion. Experiential says you set up an experiment where they figure out the solution on their own, because actively getting involved. Has anyone ever had like one of those moments where you were like thinking about something or learning about something and all of a sudden it like snapped and you like had that aha moment? Yeah, it's so hard to do because as humans, we just want to race to tell people the aha moment. But experiential learning theory really says like, if they don't have the aha moment for themselves, it's going to be less learning, you know? So you try to build that aha moment for them. I'm going to skip over the chat because I'm at 8 minutes. Is that okay with everyone? I'm sorry. I know you're all tired. Thank you for hanging. Culturally relevant pedagogy and culturally responsive really is just connecting in student identities and realities. And Amanda, I think you were the one who was talking about this. I think you'll want to pick one of these two for your focus for this week, but it's really, so it's building in different cultures and things into your teaching. So a way with family studies might be just like talking about differences in divorce or perspectives on divorce in different cultures, things like that. And they don't even need to be different like geographical cultures. It can be different just perspectives. Like culture can be your religious viewpoint. It can be I don't want to say political, but the amount of like, you know, conservative that you are. So this is just being aware. Culturally responsive is that you use your own students' cultural experiences conduits for learning. This is probably going to be easiest for you with actual students right now and students who show different demographics. Does that make sense? If you're an FCEDS student, you might have to be a little bit more challenged or reflect on practicum or something, because you almost have to have the learner to then say like, okay, this is what I weave in for them. I think of this tendency more easy in a foods one, but one related to family studies is in a lot of cultures like co-sleeping is very acceptable, but in Americans it's not. So then like taking a look at that, and is that a really bad practice or not, etc., things like that. CTE is really one of those places that brings it all together. I think that whatever family, for this one, I had actually pick your family studies topic first before you pick your focus that you're going to weave in. And I'm not saying this is the ChatGPT is the answer engine, but I would maybe write my procedures out and then throw those into ChatGPT and say, like, how does the following reflect a humanist learning theory approach? Or how does this reflect this learning? Or how could it reflect more? And then use that is where your 20 comes in to go like, oh, okay, I see how I could pull it out more, or it does, because that is what kind of you put in your, like, this is how you see the learning theory going on in my lesson. Thank you, everyone. I know it was a long day because our speakers went long, and then I had to cover things from last week, but I appreciate you all being here. Do you have any questions before we break before next week? Because you do have your lesson. I am still accessible via email, and I will set up. I'm all teaching online this stuff, so I have a big, wide open, flexible schedule, and I miss people, so I would love to hop on for 15 minutes with you sometimes if you needed.
I just have a question. I
Yeah.
thought somewhere I saw that there was like hours spent outside of school doing observations, that kind of thing. Did I read that somewhere? Did I not?
I will have that answer next week.
Okay.
I am going to Joanne Tubbs. I have been given differing answers on that the times I asked. I'm really wanting to get clarity about it. I will let you know it next week. I'm going to try and apply it in the least. What it's really there for is sometimes people need a graded practicum experience because they have only an elementary license, and I was trying to weave it in so they didn't have to pay for an extra credit hour. But I put it in, and I'll find a way that is the least disruptive on your schedule possible.
Perfect.
Maybe all my traditional students can come visit you for
Because I just found I was just told I have to do my whole instructional plan with the AEA this year, so I have all of those times in that I have to take off. So I'm just trying to weave all this stuff in. So,
well, it's most important for those people who only have K through an elementary only endorsement. So,
well, that's what I have. So.
Well, then I actually do hope it works for you, because we do need to get you a graded field experience with your right students. But let me ask, I've got Joanne Tubbs. She now works for Iowa State, and I'm going to ask her, and I'm going to give her a real answer tomorrow.
Okay. Perfect.
I'm very sorry that I don't know that up front.
No, you're good.
Do know my intentions were good. Thank you, everyone. I really, really appreciate it. I know it's a long day. I don't anticipate all of them going this long. In fact, I'm hoping that on expert sessions, we're just going to have time to work. And then if you have to hop up, you just like schedule a few minutes with me to check in. But I appreciate everyone. Thanks for letting me be sick last week. It was not a good time in my life, but I'm doing much better now. And I appreciate you all. I know this is extra, but I really appreciate you all. And I hope we all get something out of this. So I will see you next week. Let me know if I will post the recording right now, but I'm not making the recording publicly available. I don't think there's anything terrible being done, but I just searched Regents and news right now, and there are people out there going things to find out. Just the news. That's all. That's all I want to life. I want it to be newsworthy. So that's why the recording is just going to be available to people in this class with their email. If you want it, let me know. It's not secret. It's just, yeah. All right. Have a good night. Missy or Priscilla, do you need anything before I close? You're muted, honey. You're muted.
No, I was just reading the last comment about the, yes, I am elementary, but I do have that K-8 reading and English endorsements, and yeah, so I was just reading a few of those.
But I just need to get a good answer, because if they're not going to take it unless it's separate on your transcript, then I have to do it separate anyway. But I was really just hoping to embed it to get everyone at all its same time.
And what would that exact, like, do I just go and observe another FCS teacher?
So that's what I need to get the answer on. So we
Okay,
have two things
okay.
for you. Either you can do it in your classroom
Yep.
and I can come just check it off.
And at one
Or-
point, I do remember being said, like, it'll kind of be like a student teaching, but it's in your own room and
Yep.
kind of
Yep,
thing.
because
Yep.
I have gotten a different answer. I'm stopping
And
recording.
actually the lady in the neighboring district is in our class too. So
Well, and that
Oh.
would be the second one.
we're all new.
If you have to, you're gonna have to go over there for a day, teach a lesson. I will talk to your administrator about it and be like, this is
Well,
just.
my admin's my hubby, so that's
Oh,
fine.
that's true. That's right.
He knows
right.
he knows I'm taking all these courses and they haven't had this program for over 10 years. So
Well, and what I appreciate about your husband is he actually really does appreciate that I don't move the legislation.
yeah.
Not all administrators do that. And I'm like, I do that for sure.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah, no, it will be one of two things. It will be in your classroom, and then I have to just come say like, oh, she can teach secondary students without damaging them. Or it will be in somebody else's classroom, in so which case I still come and say like,
Well,
oh, she
September
can
12th, I'm
do
going to
this.
the AEA to do all of that with all of the SCS teachers. So I can bump some out, rub some elbows and figure out somebody. There's lots of districts down here in the Quad Cities that I can just go
When
to.
I get a straight answer,
Perfect.
we'll let you
That'd
know,
be great.
but it is meant to get you that like graded field,
Yeah.
graded practicum experience if necessary, if required, so that we can just check that one too.
Perfect. Well,
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
All right, talk to you later.
Yep. Bye.